6:30. I hereby call this meeting to order. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. We'll observe a moment of silence. Thank you. Announcements, awards, special recognition. Here, I thought you were all here for the budget conversation tonight. No, maybe not? All right. We'll start with golf carts. Let's start with golf carts. Is that right? All right. First of all, I couldn't believe the turnout. I couldn't believe the participation, maybe because we had good weather and no threat of rain, or maybe because we did this for our 50th time and we're all catching on. But I was just so impressed with everyone in Peachtree City. Obviously, we had a wonderful 4th of July. The fireworks are spectacular, better than ever this year, I'm sure of it. And the parade had record participation and record crowds. So I just want to thank everyone for such a great day. First of all, we'll start with the 3rd place golf cart, board and brush. Let's give them a hand. Please come up. Our 2nd place golf cart is Yasuhisa Matsuchita.
Great pronunciation.
Yes.
Great
Spot on.
pronunciation.
What's that?
Pronunciation.
Excellent.
Thank you. 1st place golf cart, Brian Cole. Next, we have the most patriotic. The award goes to Peachtree City Water and Sewer Authority. Now, I've been around a long time. I've never seen a sewer authority win a most patriotic award ever. And it was an awesome float with lots of participation. Next, we have the most creative, the flying squirrel. I know they're here. Another new business in Peachtree City. Next, we have the Mayor's Trophy, Peachtree City School of Dance. And finally, last but not least, the Grand Marshal Trophy is awarded to A Better Way. I'm going to take a minute. I'm going to go off script. I'm going to take a minute. I have a mid-year gut check, a little update that I want to share while everyone is here. I know everyone is busy. Everyone has to go back to families and jobs and travel. So I'm going to go ahead and pull this ahead from the end of the agenda for the evening and share this now. It's been a great year so far. In the first half of this year, 2023, this city council has extended our library hours, not once, but twice. We've extended public comment time in city council meetings. We've restored public hearings and the right to vote to our planning commission. Thank you, Mr. DeStadio, who worked on that for well over a year. Our 4th of July parade set records for attendance and participation. The fireworks display was second to none, and I was proud just to be a part of it. Anyone who was there that day was proud just to be a part of that celebration. As I speak, we have 4 major industries in Peachtree City, each making an investment topping $100 million in an expansion right here and hiring hundreds of employees. We have new small businesses like Flying Squirrel opening on a near weekly basis. And now we have technical college resources available in Peachtree City at the old Booth Middle School with Southern Crescent Technical College and Clayton State University so that these industries can prepare the trained and ready workforce that they need. I talked to Dr. Irvin Clark last week, president of Southern Crescent Technical College, and he is excited that they are bringing an ASN program, Associate Science of Nursing program, to this campus to help meet the national crisis in terms of the shortage of nurses. We're establishing citizen committees so far this year to include recreation, a teen forum, and cart path advisory committees. Peachtree City is consistently ranked one of the top 5 safest cities in Georgia to live, and we received that accolade again in February of this year. We've rolled out robust public communications with live streaming of our meetings and events, an important presence on all social media platforms, an e-newsletter, and quality video that has netted Peachtree City 3 Telly Awards so far this year. Major news outlets in Atlanta now turn to our communications department for news, information, photos, and video. We now inform and engage our citizens to an extent Peachtree City has never seen before. SPLOST kicked in starting July 1st. We have new pennies going into a new bucket. The SPLOST 2023 list includes $67 million of projects that our citizens want to see happen. I'm excited about Bob Kernow's leadership. We're all excited about Bob's new leadership. We're pointing to a great budget that we'll hear more about later tonight. And this positive, cohesive council will continue to work to advance quality projects and programs on behalf of our citizens. It's an honor to sit up here and lead such a wonderful city. I'm proud of the work we're doing here. Thank you, Peachtree City. Let's keep up the great work. Thanks. At this time, City Manager Bob Curnow will award some Telly Awards.
Thank you, Mayor, for those amazing words and talking about the progress of the city and the community and civic engagement that we have. It's a privilege for me to be here tonight and in front of everybody talking about this. I am proud to announce that the city has won 3 Bronze Telly Awards for its communications We have really ramped up our capabilities in communicating with the public and getting information out there, being the one to turn to when you need some information about the city. And as a testament to that fine work and the work efforts that are done in our communications and marketing department, the Telly Awards really are a testament to the capabilities and that on-ramp, if you will, of getting the communications out there and having the city be that pinnacle of communication for our citizens. So with that being said, the 44th Annual Telly Awards honors video and television across all screens. Nearly 13,000 entries from around the world are judged by the Telly Award Judging Committee, and an industry that is created of 200 leading professionals in advertising agencies, production companies, and major television networks. The City of Peachtree City won 3 Bronze Telly Awards in 3 different categories. One for our video for Dear Santa in social videocraft and use of stock footage. One for What is Splost Video in branded content, general government relations. And one for Mondays with the Mayor, which is also non-broadcast general government relations. I and we are honored to receive these Telly Awards, and we plan to continue to develop great content and videos in the future. So with that, I would like to ask Andre Walker, and if Hannah Thomas is here, maybe she's not here tonight, but I'd like to introduce Andre Walker, who has had a instrumental role in creating these videos and working with this. And I would like to present to you, sir, the 3 Telly Awards and to the council, and I'd like to give you a certificate of appreciation. Thank you very much. I'd say we'd like to get a picture, but this gentleman walked from behind the camera, so yeah, you can get a picture.
Way to go, Andre.
Congratulations.
Congratulations. Well deserved.
Andre.
Next on the agenda, we have a presentation, AARP Trail Improvement Project, Keith Larson.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council, and city residents. My name's Keith Larson. I'm a Peachtree City resident, and I speak for and communicate with many pedestrians, bicyclists, runners, and others in our community about safety and recreation. Tonight, I'm going to give a presentation. Next slide, please. To provide the council and the city with a feedback on the completion of a path accessible trail marking project that I did this winter. I'm going to share some publications, national publications that resulted from the project, as well as show a video that was shot in Peachtree City and broadcast by AARP in a webinar about walkability. Next slide. So last summer I was in a 6-month walking college, which was to advance awareness and knowledge of best practices for walkability and pedestrian safety across the United States, led by America Walks, sponsored by AARP. And during that process, I was supposed to write a plan about my city. And in talking to residents, especially those with disabilities, they found that there was a general lack of awareness of the accessibility of city parks to those with handicaps or that were disabled, including those in wheelchair. So I got a grant from AARP, and I got the city council approval last November to proceed with a project to mark those routes. And since that time, the city has also updated their website to include this accessibility information. Next slide, please. These are the areas that I worked on: Huddleston Pond, Spyglass Island at Battery Way, Luther Glass Pond, Flat Creek Nature Area, Line Creek Nature Area, and Summerby Woods. Next slide, please. In doing this, working with city staff, which I gotta say I had a great support from, we wanted to develop a sign that was nice, scaled to the path, and appropriate for what we were doing. Many people have seen many ranges of signs traditionally, like you see on the bottom there, marking accessibility at parking lots, but what about on a trail along a path? What's appropriate? So I designed this one here following best practices from other agencies. Next slide. This is what it looks like when you see it out in the trail. It's only 44 inches tall, but it is scaled and appropriate for a park setting. Next slide. Part of the process was planning and getting feedback from residents. One of the areas where I highlighted we're doing was Summerbee Woods nature area adjacent to Summerbee Village. So the residents there gave us a lot of good feedback on what they saw that they needed to address accessibility in their park, including trail signs. Next slide. So as a result of their feedback for their specific audience, we designed signs for their trails to mark each of their trails that included not only the color of the trail, but also a natural feature that they highlighted and the color of the trail. And this is, again, a memory retention for seniors and for those who might otherwise be disabled. Next slide. So we did over 30 posts all total across the city when we include the trail markers at Summerbee Woods. Next slide. So these are the areas that we accomplished access at Flat Creek Boardwalk from the lake spillway and at the boardwalk. Next slide. At Huddleston Pond and Luther Glass Pond, viewable from the accessible parking spots. Next slide. At Line Creek Nature, again from the parking lot, two small areas where there are accessible. Next slide. At Spyglass Island, accessible from Battery Way. Next slide. Then when we got to Summerbee Woods, there was a lot of things that you could say were left unchecked in finishing that nature area, and the residents gave us feedback and a lot of great volunteer support. So things like painting the kiosk, and the city recs put up new trail maps and trail park rules and information. Next slide. And here's another information board that we updated and painted. Next slide. One of the trailheads was unfinished. You see the trail rail, handrail was not cut, capped, or painted, and we did that as a group, as also gravelled it later. Next slide. This is my trail crew from Summerbee helping install trail signs at an intersection. Next slide. And there was 13 trail benches down in that park that were never painted, so they painted all of them. Next slide. And they created a new nature view area that they called Bobcat View, because they've seen a bobcat down there, that gives you a view of over 200-year-old oak trees in the forest right there. And you know, in the springtime, the lilies are coming up through the swamp. It's beautiful. Next slide. One of the big safety features that we addressed was this other trail ramp. It was narrow. It didn't have a handrail. In fact, you see on the right, the residents down there duct taped some boards or logs from the forest to make a handrail. So we said that's a no-go. So next slide. So this is what we did. We built a deliberate ramp that is accessible even by the emergency services with a Stokes stretcher if necessary. Next slide. And it's all got steps, handrails, painted, next slide, and gravelled. It's a 60-foot long ramp. Next slide. While working on this project, the ARP wanted me to use their Walk Audit Toolkit to address and identify features to improve in the city that I'm working in. Unfortunately, it was written for an urban city sidewalk environment. So I offered up to ARP National. I said, what about multi-use paths and trails for all the rest of America? And they said, great idea. What you got? I sent it to them and they published it. Next slide. And then they took my story, we published it in a 4-page article by America Walks in January, an article about our project here in Peachtree City. Next slide. But that's not all. ARP said, well, we're planning on doing a webinar about walkability, improving walkability across America. Would you like to be a part of that? And we said, sure. So we got people from Peachtree City together on a cold January morning. It was about freezing, wasn't it, Kim? Yeah, about freezing. And we shot 6 hours of video, came down with a 3-minute video summary. That's how you go. So here's the next slide. So here's the Summerbee crew. I wish they were here. I did a presentation to them yesterday. They're great people down there. So next slide. So this has now been released. You can go to the ARP website and view it yourself. The whole 30-minute video. We're one of 3 communities, but we're highlighted in it for the use of the walk audit system. So without further ado, can we go show the video? Hi, I'm Keith Larson. I'm a Peachtree City, Georgia resident, and I am the Bike Walk Fayette Community Advocate.
Peachtree City has a unique lifestyle that centers around our 100 miles of multi-use path. This is a healthier lifestyle that's focused on walking, running, riding bicycles, walking your dog, even skateboarding and scootering, in addition to using a golf cart. It means we can reach every corner of our community and leave our cars in the garage.
I just love the greenery, the peacefulness, the abundance of wildlife. You know, it's like a Zen space.
Over time, I've noticed that we needed some improvements for accessibility because I have neighbors who have disabilities. I was introduced to the AARP Walk Audit Toolkit, but I realized that it didn't fit for our suburban environment with multi-use paths and trails. It was focused on sidewalks.
So we developed for AARP walk audit worksheets for multi-use paths and trails that any community can download and use to improve their local network.
During our walk audit, some of our Somerville residents suggested that we change the trail names to something that matches the nature area, and as well as adding features and addressing some safety accessibility issues, like you see this handrail that they installed because there wasn't one. Our Parks and Recreation system has basically been a continuing evolving conversation with our residents, a continuous walk audit, if you want to say, of our path system. Because of the golf carts and then some of the speeding bicycles, many pedestrians feel uncomfortable or unsafe. Our city solution has been to the installation on our multi-use path system of these speed humps with a 32-inch gap, maintaining an accessible route for pedestrians, people in wheelchairs, as well as bicyclists.
Peachtree City is able to install new signage at 6 of our parks and nature areas that have designated accessible trails.
It's going to really help our parents who have children who are in wheelchairs to be able to access the parks, to access areas that other kids can, and be able to be included in the lifestyle that we offer in Peachtree City.
I think it's a great step for Peachtree City to acknowledge to our aging population, now 20%, that the city is open to them and it is welcoming their participation in our outdoor recreation.
This would not have been possible without the support of City Council and City staff, so thank you very much.
Thank you, Keith. Well done.
Well done, well done.
All right, now we have public comment.
Madam Mayor, we have 3 public comments. First one is Ms. Connie Engel.
Yes. Wherever you're comfortable, you can take the podium if you wish.
Turn it on.
Want me to just go over there?
No,
Well,
you're
now it's working,
fine.
right?
you
Okay, good evening. I'll start over. Don't start the timer yet. It's a pleasure to be here. Public comment, I really appreciate that. And I'm requesting a new use category for seniors. There's apparently a theme here. That's for 62 years old and retirement age in the zoning ordinances of Peachtree City. This new use category would be governed by a set of criteria in light of the limited impact that senior housing has on the city and county's infrastructure, which includes schools, roads, traffic. So I suggest that you count the residents, not simply the number of units per acre. It's a more accurate metric to use to determine the residential impact of a senior facility. So if you do that, I believe you will have 3 immediate benefits there. As the senior population ages, there's no place in Peachtree City for an active retiree that wants to downsize and be around a bunch of fun active retirees. These people have raised their families here, they've paid taxes, they've volunteered, they've lived their lives here, and they want to stay here. And right now, there's not much that fits that bill. Second benefit is it increases the tax base without increasing the burden on any of the city or county services.
In today's zoning, you don't recognize that, that a limited number of residents live in senior housing. They average about 1.2 people per unit, as opposed to the traditional multifamily where you average 3+ people per unit. So by adding the category and raising the density cap, you'll provide a thriving location for senior population. So why are we asking you to increase the allowable density? Because most people in the senior facilities are living alone, widowed, divorced, whatever, and again, not taxing on the roads, the systems, the schools. So, and I know it's obvious here that you want to care for all of the Peachtree City residents, everybody. And the cost of fitness center, what goes into these senior living, which is fitness centers, pickleball courts, gardening pads, pet care, pools, it cannot be supported under the current density cap that limits the number of units per acre. You can do that, but it requires then a much higher rent that is completely out of reach for a lot of seniors. So, once again, requesting that the City Council direct staff to draft new regulations and ordinances that allow these senior living facilities to be geared toward the real impact of that the seniors have on infrastructure and community by counting residents and not the number of units. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The second person to speak will be Ms. Tamara Moore.
Oh, I feel frivolous with what I'm gonna say. I've been here before and I've met all of you. My name is Tamara Allen Moore. I can't believe I'm gonna say this, but in 1990, I was parked at Riley Field around 11 p.m. with my now husband as I lived with my parents here and he lived in Alabama. A car drove up. It was an auxiliary policewoman. It was my mother. An inaugural member of this group. She had also worked a full day at the library, come home, cooked me and my father a dinner before donning the fashionable vest that came with that volunteer work. I think my husband, we've been married now for 32 years, drove all the way back to Huntsville instead of facing my mother. On May 18th, don't tell anybody that story. On May 18th of this year, I watched the regular city council meeting live online because I was eager to listen to the agenda item as it relates to policy 806, the naming of facilities, parks, and other areas. I was gonna quote some of the May meeting minutes and be a bit dramatic, but it has been such a positive night and I applaud all the hard work and congratulations. It's just been a really positive night, truly. So I was just surprised that it was tabled. The last time anything in the city was renamed to honor someone was over 15 years ago. Additionally, my request to honor a wonderful citizen since 1973, volunteer, a parishioner, wife, mother, and over 30-year city employee was thoughtful, deserved, and embarrassingly long overdue. It is also not lost on me that someone, any other than a family member, should have proposed this. From the minutes and the things that I heard in May, it should be thoughtful to rename a facility or something after somebody. It should be discussed. I wholeheartedly agree with that. It should be voted on. And it doesn't have to be something that happens every year. I heard that a lot. There might be a floodgate of this or something. So I'm very passionate about who I'm speaking about. And Mary Allen, MT, should get this honor. She has more blood, sweat, and tears in this city than all of you put together. As the first Peachtree City female in a management position and passed over for much of her tenure, she never complained and felt honored to have been an asset to her city, community, church, and all of the organizations she volunteered for. She was the Kiwanis president. I could go on and on. How do you think that fountain got there? She worked with the Japanese Cultural Committee. The fountain, who do you think shepherded that? These buildings that you see today. It should be a special request. It should be an honor. It doesn't have to be annually, and it doesn't need to be long overdue female. There's a lot of
Your
males
time
in
has
there.
expired. Thank you
You won't
for
find
your
any
comment.
better, not even with me. And I don't know where you are with the process. Maybe you're farther down than I realize. And forgive me for my passion if this is something you're really considering. But I appreciate you listening and thank you for all your hard work.
Thank you.
The last person to speak will be Ms. Taylor Pesson.
Hi, I'm a resident here in Peachtree City. I moved here in 2008 and I've gone to a lot of 4th of July celebrations here in town. But it's been a really special tradition ever since my daughter was born. And she really, really enjoyed this year's celebration and wanted me to come up here and on her little shy behalf say that we really appreciate the efforts of city leadership and staff in making that happen. And we just look forward to another year next year. So thank you guys so much for all your work.
Thank you. And thank you, Charlotte. Agenda changes, council? Any? No. Minutes. We have 3. June 8th, 2023 special called workshop minutes. June 15th, 2023 regular meeting minutes. June 20th, 2023 budget workshop.
Mayor, I move that we approve the June 8th, 2023 special call workshop minutes, the June 15th, 2023 regular meeting minutes, and the June 20th, 2023 budget workshop.
I'll second that.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Consent agenda items. There are 3. SPLOST 2023 Georgia Fund 1 Resolution. Fiscal year 2023 budget amendment, sale of seized vehicles, stormwater maintenance agreement, Gerber Collision Services 455 South Highway 74.
Madam Mayor, I propose that we accept the consent agenda items A, B, and C as previously brought into the agenda,
Hold
Wait a
on.
minute, you move to approve it. You said you proposed to.
excuse me, I mean to approve it.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Old agenda items, we have none. New agenda items, 72301, Lenco Armored Vehicle Brand Name and Purchase. Chief Moon.
Good evening, Mayor, council, citizens. Mayor, as you've already mentioned, the 2023 SPLOST did pass by our citizens. We are now after July 1st, so we are asking for council's permission to go ahead and issue the PO to order the armored vehicle for our special response team. Staff had careful review of the qualities and functionalities that are required for this vehicle. Consideration of maintenance, capacity review of the Georgia State Authority is also on their contract rate. And staff is confident that the Lenco's Bearcat model is the best vehicle to meet our needs. It is our recommendation that you approve the brand name of Lenco Armored Vehicles Company and approve the purchase of their Bearcat model for $384,853.
Council, any questions? Questions?
No questions.
All right, can I get a motion?
Mayor, I move that we approve new agenda item 72301, the Lenco Armored Vehicle brand name and purchase for the amount of $384,853.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Chief.
And I just did want to remind you, it'll take 10 to 12 months for this to be in production, so it'll be a while before it's on site.
And for a point of clarification, this item was on our SPLOST list.
It was on the SPLOST list.
Thank
Yes,
you.
ma'am.
Yes, and Chief, you said it's going to be completed in 10 months.
10
and
to
it gets
12 months.
delivered at that time?
We should have it on site within that time is our hopes.
Excellent. Thank you.
New agenda item 72302, consider bid for facade recoating, restoration, city buildings. David Borkowski.
Good evening, Dave Borkowski, city engineer. We're recommending that council award a bid for the facade recoating and restoration of this building, Fire Station 81 and 82, to Structural Restoration Solutions in the amount of $133,600. These buildings were built with some porous block, and that type of construction is not allowed anymore. It hasn't been allowed for a long time, and this block allows moisture to propagate through, so regular waterproofing is required. We schedule this through our capital improvement plan about every 10 years, and we're coming up on that 10-year cycle point now. So we solicited bids for this work and received four bids, with Structural Restoration Solutions being the lowest. We reviewed their bid and references and found them acceptable, and in addition, the manufacturer of the waterproofing material gave a glowing recommendation of them as well. So we're recommending that council award this bid, and there is adequate funding available from the American Rescue Plan funds that we received. So it is budgeted and there are funds available. Any questions?
I have
Counsel,
a question.
Any question?
David, I know you've been here 15, 18 years. How many times have we done this now?
This is my second time for,
Because I can remember being on the planning commission, and it was, we do this like you said
every 10.
when we talked before, 10 years. I thought it was every 4 or 5 years. And I know during the last time we've talked with the city manager, we're going to eventually do something to stop having to do this, to fix the building at 10. So is this going to last 10 more years?
Yes, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Can I get a motion?
Madam Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that we approve new agenda item 72302, the bid for the facade recoating restoration as presented for the amount of $133,600 to Structural Restoration Solutions.
I second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Public hearings, we have 3. 72303, new alcohol license, Foxtail Coffee, Peachtree City, 2713 Highway 54 West, Unit B. Stacy Collins.
The protocol, when the public hearing is open, members of council become hearers. No action on their part is in order until the mayor declares the hearing complete. First, city staff will present the item. The mayor will then allow a total of 10 minutes for members of the public to comment. No individual member of the public will be given more than 5 minutes to speak. Time limits may only be extended by a majority vote of council. Prior to closing the public hearing, city staff and the public will be given the opportunity to ask questions. When the mayor is assured that input is complete, the public hearing shall be ended, and council may then debate the issue and render a decision. All speakers from the public are asked to follow these rules. Please wait to be recognized by the mayor. Come to the microphone and state your name and neighborhood prior to making remarks. Keep individual remarks under 5 minutes, and please do not repeat others' comments. Address all comments to the mayor. Thank you.
Staff presentation.
Yes. Okay, we have a applicant that has come forward for a new alcohol license for Foxtail Coffee, Peachtree City at 2713 Highway 54 West. And they have met all of the requirements, both the applicant and the location, to be awarded or to be granted an alcohol license.
All right.
That's all.
At this time, I'll open the public hearing. Would anybody like to speak in favor? Seeing none, would anyone like to speak in opposition? Seeing none, I close the public hearing. Council?
I'm glad they're here.
Another new business in Peachtree City.
And I like the concept of both alcohol and coffee together. That's very nice.
There, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, can I get any further conversation? Can I get a motion?
Madam Mayor, I'll make a motion to approve the new alcohol license under 072303 for Foxtail Coffee, Peachtree City at 2713 Highway 54 West, Unit B.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Public hearing 72305, fiscal year 2024, proposed budget and capital improvement plan. Mr. Kernow.
Yes, good evening, Mayor. I'm just looking at the clerk. Do we have to read anything into the record for this?
No,
Same
sir.
rules apply?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. So Mayor, I'd like to continue the conversation we started on June 8th regarding the financial, operational, and environmental sustainability as far as fiscal year 24 budget is concerned. I'm multitasking here. So if you remember, the conversation started, we used a central theme going through the entire budget process, and this will continue. When we met back in March, we talked about vision and values of the city, and we defined our core values, and we defined uncompromised excellence. Now, it's very important that as you move forward through the budget process, that you align your budget and your projects based on the mission of the city and the vision of the city. And that's what we did when we came through this process. And we've identified, as you'll see in the presentation, how we align to our values and our vision. There's some general highlights from the budget process. I just wanted to call to a few things that are on this slide. The vision for the budget is to maintain existing service levels while rising to the standards set in place by the directors and council, keeping in consideration uncompromised excellence. We want to maintain city facilities and make sure that we're placing demand on manpower and resources. And we want to do this by reinvesting in our city's facilities and city staff. And that really is the only way that we can ensure the preservation of our value of our assets and enhance the service delivery to our residents. We propose a stabilization of the millage rate. We've accommodated the budget to hire 17 new people without increasing the millage rate. And what I'm going to do here going forward is we're going to focus on the 4 M's that you see at the bottom, and as it relates back to the budget and the preparation of the budget for manpower, money, machines, and materials. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to our Finance Director, Paul Salvatore.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. First, want to say that we have all tons of detail on our website, a lot more than we're going to get into here. I want to give a brief overview tonight here from the public, more than staff. As a high-level overview of the general fund, I'm just showing here the adopted budget for the current year, what's proposed for FY 2024. You can see the somewhat profound, dramatic effects of inflation, both revenues and expenditures of about 11 to 12%. And we have 103,000 use of reserves programmed in. For some reason this is not moving around the way it's supposed to, but if you have another pointer. Something's blocking it. Oh, there you go. Okay. So drilling down in on that revenue side, that 12.4%, here's just a breakdown by the major categories of revenues. As I'll show in a chart in a minute, we have, biggest source of revenue is taxes. That's where the biggest jump is coming from. Also just wanted to point out that licenses and permits, we're expecting a little drop as build out on the west side starts to slow down. And also wanted to point out that a dramatic increase in investment income past year or two as interest rates have climbed sharply. This here just shows a history of our millage rate, really starting back at the end of the Great Recession, 2012, when it was at a peak of about 7.1 mils. You can see it steadily has declined over the past decade or so by over 1.1 mils. And as City Manager mentioned, we propose to keep it at the same rate for FY 2024 as the last couple of years, and maintain that millage rate stabilization. Here's a chart depicting the revenues graphically, like I showed before. As I mentioned, a vast majority of our revenue comes from taxes, ad valorem taxes and local option sales tax being the two biggest sources, and then all our other taxes, and then you see a smaller percentage comes from things like user fees and license permits, fines and forfeitures, and other revenue sources. On the expenditure side, this here is a breakdown of the $51.4 million proposed budget by department or function. We can see that the almost half the budget is for public safety. Let's see that graphically in a minute. On the right side, we show here the average residential property in Peachtree City is about $446,000, and what the tax bill would look like at the current millage rate, about $1,100, and how that's broken down by function, to how much you pay for each dollar, the pennies on the dollar, each of your tax dollars for each of those functions. So here's what Bob was talking about. We have a big investment in the manpower of those 4 M's this year. 17 new positions. We have lots of new projects, a new SPLOST. We have ARPA money, we have impact fee money, we have bond money. We have to really hit the ground running on these projects, and we need that manpower out there. So this is a big highlight of the budget this year, is this manpower. There's an investment of about $1,186,000 to the cost to the general fund. I want to emphasize this is not just salaries, but the full cost of onboarding these positions. So it would include like patrol vehicles and equipment and what have you for all these positions as well. And it's a little under $1.5 million. The other $300,000 is going to be charged to the SPLOST, for the positions highlighted in red there. So here's a graphical depiction of the proposed expenditures. Like I said, it's about half the budget is all for public safety. And then when you look at other big 3, 4 operational departments, you got Public Works, Buildings and Grounds, Recreation, Library. They all make up about 3/4 of the entire budget. And then the other quarter is for things like planning and zoning, building inspection, and other support services, and about 7% for debt service, which is mostly capital items, or all capital items. This is just another way of looking at the expenditures in the general fund by account category. The primary reason the government exists is to provide services to the citizenry. So it should be no surprise that the majority of expenditures in the general fund are to provide those services either through in-house personnel or through outsourcing contracted services. Another 7% for operating supplies, another 7 or 8% for capital and debt service on that capital. It's just just a quick summary of general fund. Sources of funds, $51.4 million total, the $103,000, coming from cash reserves to balance it out. Different categories of revenues there. Again, lots more detail on that in the budget book online. This entire book here in front of me is out there on the website for you to go looking through all details if you'd like. And this is on the appropriation side of the general fund. Also, $51.4 million, a balanced budget. I do like to point out that we budget for some savings, either from vacancies, from vacant positions, or what have you, and that we spend about $3.5 million on debt service out of the general fund. Moving on to the enterprise funds, we have a couple of enterprise funds. First, stormwater. We don't have any big operational changes in the stormwater fund for next year. Excuse me. We are actually past due for a cost of service and rate study. The last one was done like over 10 years ago, so we included funding to conduct that study next fiscal year in the stormwater fund. We also have included 600,000 for projects like pipelining, particularly is really what they do. 47,000 for vehicles and equipment. Total budget adding up to a little over $2.6 million for the Stormwater Utility Fund. And this is, what the budget looks like as far as revenues and expense. Most of the revenue coming from charges for services. I do want to point out that the that debt service amount there is represents a savings this year of about $30,000. We did a bond refinancing this past year, which saved approximately $300,000 over the remaining 10 years of the bond, or approximately an average of $30,000 a year over the next 10 years. That's reflected in that number. Amphitheater is another enterprise fund. I just wanted to highlight a lot of the recent improvements have enhanced the customer experience, mostly with the seating areas, picnic, lawn, etc. People are enjoying, and we do have $100,000 programmed in next year's budget to do additional upgrades to the stage area, particularly the lighting trusses. We're hoping that we might be able to get some bigger acts, that accommodate their equipment, with the improved lighting trusses. This continues to be a self-sustaining operation. Any profits from it are put right back into the facility and reinvested. It's a popular attraction. We've had last year 8 sold-out shows, and so far on track for about 5 or 6 sold out this season. This is what the budget looks like. It's about a $1.7 million operation. See most of it revenues from ticket sales. I do want to take the opportunity to recognize and thank all the sponsors. Our business community here has really stepped up, over $270,000 of sponsor revenue. Businesses in our community stepping up, wanting to be a part of it. There is a $75,000 transfer in from the hotel motel tax fund that I'll talk about in just a second. That's mainly for marketing the venue. And most of the majority of the expenses are for the talent itself and the programming expenses for the talent. So the hotel motel tax fund is a special revenue fund. We are projecting next year to collect a little under $2 million. We collected the 8% level, and we have to follow state law guidelines to break it out, as it's shown down in the bottom here. 3.5% goes to the Convention and Visitors Bureau, 3% goes to the City General Fund, and then 1.5% is what's restricted, most restricted part of the fund. It's called Tourism Product and Development. And we funnel that mainly all into our recreational type facilities that generate tourism. You can see the 75,000 there that I mentioned earmarked for the amphitheater, but the lion's share is at 295,000 goes to several other facilities, including the tennis center, the PAC, the Peachtree Athletic Club, ball fields down there on South 74, BMX track, to name a few. Moving on to the capital improvement plan. Just listed here what the major capital outlays are for next year. For FY 2024, it's about a $3.25 million CIP. I don't want to go into everything in detail, but you can see there the things listed: the facility improvements, public works equipment, patrol vehicle replacements. We're very heavily invested in technology used by every department of the city, and also cybersecurity. We have some street resurfacing, non-splosh there for our local Lamig match, and then others, vehicles, equipment, et cetera. Again, all the details are in the budget book online, and also the 5-year CIP, so details of, this and 4 years after it. Finally, to show the 5-year financial model that we do multi-year planning with the budget. We don't just look at 1 year at a time. Try to be strategic in how we approach it. Start out with the last audited numbers for FY 2022, then the current year adopted budget and what we're projecting for this current fiscal year. This column is the proposed 2024 budget that we've been talking about. You can see here what we talked about, the use of reserves of $103,000, and that highlighted there is the millage rate staying the same. I like to point out that for each year in the 5-year model, there's no future millage hikes programmed in. We try to strive to maintain that millage rate stabilization. We have a reserve balance of just under $30 million, $29.7 million. As you can see, it's about now projected to be about 56%, but that as the budget grows and that number stays relatively the same, even 5 years from now, that percentage will drop to just under 48%. And for now, the extra reserves are coming in handy because as we start SPLOST projects, and the money won't start coming in until August. With the last SPLOST, we did some short-term borrowing, like we did a loan for the spillway, the dam, and for a couple of road projects out there on Highway 54 West. I think we can avoid doing that kind of short-term borrowing this time, for SPLOST projects, by maybe using borrowing against some of that excess reserve we're seeing in the current fiscal year, and avoid borrowing. That's all I have. I'm gonna turn it back over to Bob.
Thank you, Paul.
Thanks.
So this slide should look familiar. We started talking about this in the budget workshops, and we went through, my view and staff's view on how we define sustainability in the city, and I look at it in 3 ways. I look at operational sustainability, and that goes back to our capacity to handle the projects and the staffing to be able to get those across the finish line. And that's really significant here, is we align the budget based on those projects. As you can see, a lot of the increases that we're dealing with are the cost of inflation, and we are also dealing with, the cost of vehicles and things going up, astronomically. We talked over the last year or so, the unit price of asphalt going up, and you've seen those contracts come in front of council. Paul just got done talking about the financial sustainability and looking at how we can afford to own what we currently own, and that goes back to the facilities maintenance programming, that goes back to utilizing the money that we have been given through ARPA from the federal government, using our impact fees, and then using some of the bond money that we have. And the critical aspect of that is those funds have a specific time frame in which they need to be encumbered and spent. So in order to get those projects done, that goes back to that manpower capability, is that do we have enough staff on board to actually get a large project done or multiple large projects done at the same time? And then we look at the environmental sustainability side of it, and that goes back to our green spaces, the boardwalk, and the things along those lines, our amenities, our parks, and so on and so forth. Just a quick overview of some of the things that we've seen. I call it supply chain fatigue, and our police chief just talked about that, and you probably heard our fire chief say this before. It's going to take 10 to 12 months in order to get a vehicle through the purchasing process and the build process. It's also taking up to about 2 years to receive on EMS vehicles, so that's our paramedic vehicles and our fire trucks. So what the manufacturers have started doing now is they've come to us and said now is the time to lock in those prices and get in line and you're actually waiting for as much as 24 months before you take delivery of that, but you need to get in line now. So as Paul mentioned, you know, with utilizing some of the cash reserves to help, you know, fund some of those projects now, or if they're on SPLOST list, we can start taking advantage of that and using those funds. I know that was a question that came up. One of the other aspects of it is that what our organization actually maintains, what our staff maintains. We have 74 city buildings. We have 500,000 square feet of space. And just on the cart pass alone, we have 29 tunnels, 36 path bridges, and 12 roadway bridges. And that, all of that service and all of that maintenance is handled by our staff. And with that said, I just want to give a preview of the budget calendar. So we have 3 more dates in front of us. We have August the 3rd, August the 10th, and August the 17th. And with that, Mayor, I'm going to turn this public hearing back over to you.
All right, thank you. At this time, I'll open the public hearing. Council, I want to let you know that according to our ordinances, the public hearing for the budget is 10 minutes total. If it turns out we need more time to hear from our citizens, I'll take a motion. Okay? At this time, I'll open the public hearing. Can I see a show of hands in favor? Show of hands of people who would like to speak in favor. And can I see a show of hands from people who think they might want to speak in opposition? Okay. All right. At this time, I would like to hear from those who wish to speak in favor.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council. Keith Larson. I live in Sandown Creek, Peachtree City. I'd like to compliment the staff on their thoroughness in preparation of the new capital improvement project 5-year plan, specifically to paying attention to the details of the promises made to our residents in the 2017 SPLOST project lists, putting forward and going through the process to identify and finalize those closeout path and street projects that we promised that we would do. And so I just want to make that note that I appreciate that attention to detail, and so that we will get those neighborhoods that don't have a path connection. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak in favor? Seeing none, is there anyone who wishes to speak in opposition? Seeing none, I hereby close the public hearing. Council, discussion, questions, comments?
No. I think everything's going good. Personally, the part that I've been involved in with Bob, working on the maintenance side of it, I'm pretty pleased with what we're doing.
Yeah, Madam Mayor, I got a couple of comments. First of all, I want to compliment Paul and the city manager. They put up with me. I went page by page and line by line through this, and I appreciate them staying there and sitting with me and going over a budget. And if you've gone over budgets in the past, you see so many numbers. And I went many times line by line. Paul gave great answers. He had answers to most of that. If it wasn't covered by Paul, it was covered by Bob. So thank you to both of them.
And I got up and left.
That's right. I got through this about halfway. Frank got up and left because he didn't want to see me going through the line by line. But that's the reason I just do that. That's just stuff I did in business. I am glad we've included the inflation in some of the discussions, Bob. I thought that was excellent. I mean, 13% is the number I'm hearing bandied about. We've got to be prepared for that in our budgets. And I know that does mean that there's, keeping the millage rate where it is and not doing a complete rollback. So I understand that, and now that I've gone through the budget line by line, page by page, I agree with that. And I'm super happy about the maintenance additions to the budget. I know it's expensive, and I know it's a long term, and I know it's going to take a lot of effort on the public works and on third parties coming in, but we need to make sure that our citizens have good paths, they have good buildings, they have proper maintenance on the buildings, they last a long time. We put a lot of money into that. Let's maintain them so that they stay for a long time. And
Thank you
those
for
are my
listening
comments,
to
Mayor.
us. Thank you for listening to me.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Mr. Pribor?
I don't have any comments. Thanks for your work.
The only thing I would say is, just to reiterate, if you look at the amount of city taxes you pay for a similar private home in Fayetteville, Tyrone, there's
true.
that says something about that gentleman over there and the gentleman to my right. We've done something right for a while.
Amen.
Yeah,
Amen
do-
on that.
I do have one comment, yeah, so you just showed $446,000 house, $1,100, it costs $100 a month. I'd pay $100 a month just for the police that we have. I'd pay $100 just for the fire department, never mind all the other amenities, so I think, everybody I talked to was very happy with, living in this city and what a great place and really, what a bargain it is.
We should have shown that chart again, that bar chart that shows Tyrone and
Tyrone.
Fayetteville
And the county.
and the county.
That's on our
Well,
website.
Mil-
It's in our backup.
You have the millage rate hearings,
Yeah.
we'll probably show that again.
All right.
Thanks again, Bob and Paul and the whole staff of putting things together. It's well done.
Appreciate it.
Do we need to complete this with a motion and a second? I know our adoption is August 3rd. No, we're done.
No.
Thank you very
Okay.
much. All right, moving down the agenda. Public hearing, 72304, request to rezone 2459, 2443, and 2471 Red Wine Road from R12 to LUR. Robin Caillou.
Yes. Okay, I'm going to read the protocol now. When the public hearing is opened, members of council become hearers. No action on their part is in order until the mayor declares the hearing complete. First, city staff will present the request and provide an assessment of compliance with city code. The mayor will then allow up to 10 minutes for speakers on each side of the issue to present evidence. No individual member of the public will be given more than 5 minutes to speak. Time limits may only be extended by a majority vote of council and will be divided equally between those supporting and those opposing the issue. The mayor will recognize the applicant and those supporting the issue to present evidence. Remarks will be limited to a total of 10 minutes. The mayor will then recognize those opposing the issue to present evidence for up to 10 minutes. Prior to closing the public hearing, city staff and the public will be given the opportunity to ask questions of either or both sides of the issue. When the mayor and council are assured that the presentation of evidence is complete, the public hearing shall be ended, and council may then debate the issue and render a decision. All speakers from the public are asked to follow these rules. Please wait to be recognized by the mayor. Come to the microphone and state your name and neighborhood prior to making remarks. Keep individual remarks under 5 minutes and do not repeat comments. Address all comments to the mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Stacey. The applicant has requested to rezone 2459, 2443, and 2471 Red Wine Road from R12, which is a single-family residential zoning district with a minimum of 12,000 square foot lots, to limited-use residential. The LUR zoning category is a site plan-specific request and requires that the applicant provide a site plan to which that zoning is tied. The applicant has requested to keep the same number of lots as would be permitted under R12, to keep the same size lots, but to change the setbacks on the lots. The request, right now, under the R12 zoning district, they require 40-foot setbacks. They are requesting 25 feet. A 10-foot setback, they're requesting 5. The rear setback is 30, and they're requesting 20. The minimum lot frontage, as you can see, does not change. And the minimum lot size does not change. But what the results of their request is because they would like to have a larger building envelope in order to build larger houses. When staff does the technical review of a application, we look at the future land use map of the comprehensive plan to make sure that it complies. The future land use category for this property is single-family medium, which means the lot sizes need to be 10,000 square feet or larger, quarter of an acre or larger. The applicant is asking for 12,000 square feet lots, so the request complies with the future land use map. A public hearing was held by the Planning Commission, and during that, there were 4 voting members in attendance on the Planning Commission. And they were not able to, they were tied 2-2. They were not able to make a recommendation either way for approval or for denial. So as a result of that public comment, staff has proposed a set of conditions in order for you to start the discussion. Those conditions are listed on the site plan, on the staff, the report that you have, but I've also provided them up here on bullet points. I'm going to go through them each so that we're all on the same page. First, that if approved, the condition would be that the lot size has to maintain what is currently zoned, which is 12,000 square feet. And the front setback for all the lots would be the requested 25 feet. However, that the side setbacks for those lots that are adjacent to the Wilshire estates and the Forest and Place estates would be, would not change, that it would keep the same of the R12, but that the remaining lots in the subdivision would reduce to what they've asked for, which is that 5 feet. This also applies to the rear setback, so that those lots that are adjacent to Forest and Place and Wilshire estates would keep at the R12, which is 30 feet, and that all of the remaining lots of the subdivision would be 20 feet. We would keep the minimum lot requirement of the R12, lot width, minimum house size. The R12 zoning district requires a 1,200 square foot home, proposing here as a 2,000 square foot home. That we would require architectural details on the side of a house facing street. This is almost a universal condition in all of our LUR zoning districts. That they would provide the multi-use paths as shown on the plan. I'll go back to where those are. Up here to the north, all the way up to Forest and Place, and then down to the south to the existing office building. That they would provide the buffers as shown on the master plan. That's a 25-foot on the sides adjacent to Wilshire Estates and Forest and Place, and that is a 40-foot resulting buffer along Redwine. Then that all parks, this is another standard condition, all parks, landscaped areas, signs, and sidewalks would be maintained by the HOA, and that environmentally sensitive buffers would not be within the buildable lot area. That is staff's presentation, and I believe the applicant is here to answer any questions you may have.
Madam Mayor, can I ask her a question? Sure. When I was on the planning commission, a 2-2 tie was a denial.
A denial of any motion that's made.
Correct.
So no motion could pass.
So you had it down as a 2-2 tie.
That's right.
You didn't record it as a denial from the planning commission.
It's not a denial of recommendation, it's that the motion can't pass, no matter what the motion is. Whether it's for approval or denial, neither can pass, because there has to be a majority to pass the motion.
Seems like we're splitting hairs, but okay, I guess.
It's Robert's
I'll-
All
rules.
right, let's let the applicants speak if they wish.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Rick Lindsay, here representing Jeff Lindsay Communities. No relation, unfortunately, but we're here, as Robin said, seeking to rezone the property from R12 to LUC. The subject property was actually annexed into the city back in early 20...
LUR, Rick, you said LUC, but LUR.
I'm sorry, LUR. Thank you, Phil. Appreciate that. The property was actually annexed into the city back in early 2021. The property currently has buffers on all sides ranging from 25 feet to 75 feet, and it is currently under construction. And as Robin said, we are not seeking to increase the number of houses or the layout of the subdivision. What we are here tonight seeking is to reduce some of the buffers, or excuse me, some of the setbacks, so that a variety of larger homes can be built. We agree with staff's conditions that those homes, those properties that are along the periphery that back up to Wilshire, back up to Forreston Place. Those rear setbacks and those side setbacks will not be changed. The front setbacks for all the properties, as Robin said, would be reduced. We're requesting to 25 feet. And the reason why we're doing that is since the property was annexed back in early 2021, there's been a seismic shift in the housing market and in the building market. The current demand in Peachtree City is for larger and more expensive homes. There simply aren't those being built right now in our town. The cost of building homes has gone up substantially due to material shortages, supply chain issues, and labor shortages. So my client wants to and needs to adapt to those market changing conditions. We anticipate that the price of these homes will approach $1 million each. One of the conditions that staff has recommended is to increase the minimum size of the homes to 2,000 square feet from the 1,200 square feet. We're totally supportive of that. The homes actually will be somewhere at a minimum of 2,500 if that, but up exceeding 4,000 square feet on some of the homes. So again, my client's request is to reduce some of the setbacks so that he can build larger and more expensive homes that are commensurate with the homes that are already in the area. The request is not to increase the number of homes. It is not to change the layout of the subdivision, but simply to provide a larger building area. Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, I'll open the public hearing. Can I see a show of hands of all who wish to speak in favor? Thank you. Can I see a show of hands of all who wish to speak in opposition? Ooh, okay. We will be sure not to repeat previous comments, and we'll take the first speaker. First of all, one last time, is there anyone who wishes to speak in favor? Seeing none?
Madam Mayor?
Sir.
May I make a motion that we, since we have so many speakers tonight, to extend the amount of time given to those maybe to 4 minutes per person, just to, so that we're not here all night long?
Let's just see how it goes, and then we make that motion, and that's the way we'd kind of set it up. If we run out of time, and this gentleman might take 30 seconds, this one might take 2 minutes, they might wrap it up.
But I think
then at that point, we'll extend it if we need to. Question is, how long would you want to extend it? That's my opinion.
I made a motion, so we'll just go with
All
that.
right, you made a motion?
No seconds?
I'll second that we're going to extend it, but after I feel the way Phil does, we ought to extend it after we see how far into it we're going to go.
That's not his motion.
That's an amendment, though. That's an amendment to mine.
Well, what time, what's your motion?
My motion was to put it out to 4 minutes per person.
And a maximum of 20? Is that what you want? We have a maximum of
well,
10 per side.
Wait a minute, he's already made the motion. So.
There's a motion and a second on the floor.
The second was not for his motion. The second was for a different
He
concept.
said second, but then he made a comment after that in terms of what he intended, but.
What do you want me to say? I second it, but then I made a comment, yes.
There's nothing wrong with that, I was just saying that's what happened. There was a second to the motion.
Okay.
Is there a motion? The motion that is on the floor is, we want to, at this time, extend public comment time to 4 minutes per person, 20 minutes overall maximum.
There was no maximum, just 4 per minute.
Ooh. I have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All
Aye.
opposed? 4 minutes per person. We have 3 ayes. All opposed?
Nay.
Okay, motion carries. We'll go ahead and get started at 4 minutes per person. All those who wish to speak in favor? All those who wish to speak in opposition? Go ahead and line up. We have 4 minutes each. Maximum. If you don't need it, you don't need it.
I was just going to say, if you don't need it, you don't need it.
Thank you.
And please don't repeat yourself.
Right.
And
Try
let's
not
start
to.
with your name and address.
Hi, my name is Kathleen O'Mahony, and I live at 124 Holly Springs Drive, directly adjoining the Mills Farm property. I am also the president of the Wilshire Estates Homeowners Association, and I have been empowered by my fellow board members and my community to speak in opposition to the proposed rezoning of Mills Farm from R12 to LUR. When the City Council voted to annex the former Hearst Farm into Peachtree City,
they zoned it R12, which conforms with the existing zoning of Wilshire Estates, Forest and Place, and the majority of the subdivisions along Red Wine Road and Robinson Road. Now the developer wants to rezone to LUR to be able to shrink the setbacks in order to build larger homes on lots that weren't designed for them. Prior to the planning recommendations to preserve the setbacks on the western and northern edges of the property for the rear and the side setbacks, this would have placed the homes much closer to our existing homes in Wilshire Estates and Forest and Plates. That has the potential to decrease the ability of the homeowners to enjoy their backyards for the benefit of the developer only. It also increases the potential for conflicts between neighbors, as privacy and noise will be an issue. The planning recommendation to leave the R12 setbacks for rear and side in place for the lots for Wilshire Estates and Forest and Place is very helpful. But I do worry that if you approve the rezoning, the developer will come back and say that he needs variances for those lots. It's beginning to feel like the children's book, If You Give a Mouse a Cookie, where the mouse keeps asking for more. I urge you to vote no on the zoning request. I do have a bit of a tangent right now. One of the issues we've been having in Wilshire Estates relates to the pond on the northwest side of the property that was filled in, and the lots were raised, and that now that cuts off the drainage from the city retention area, and that directly results in the flooding of 2 of my neighbors' yards. Public Works has been, because a very large amount of water comes out of the pipe from the retention basin and it has nowhere to go. Public Works has been made aware of it. A ditch was dug, but a long-term fix has not been instituted. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you. Who's next?
Neil Bolin, Kedron. I've got a copy of my paper, let me see this drawing, of the site plan, and the side that we're doing here, we're in 5 feet on each side, we're adding or taking away. We had 10 feet as the proposed R12, and we're going to RU.
Limited use residential, LUR.
So you're going to 5 versus 10. That means about 6 less houses going to be built if we go to the original plan. How is that the city's problem? We planned on R12, let's go R12. If the builder can't do it, that's unfortunate, but it's R12. That's why we put it as R12. And if he's missing out on 6 houses.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Next, please.
Joel Cohen Jr. here.
Name?
Jane Watts. So the outside boundaries, Forest and, if he would hold up to that in truth and abide by it, that would be okay. But time and time again, I can't say that this builder can be trusted, obviously, and I'm there, I watch him every day. I don't believe, I just don't feel assured that even if this is what's going to happen, I don't trust that it'll come true. And, when we go back to the lovely Peachtree city that we are, and the landscaping and the trees, there is no detailed landscape design for the streets, for anything else. And I too have watched where they've pushed the earth. There's a flock of geese that have lived there for nearly 20 years. And, it's too bad that the city didn't buy it and turn a good portion of it into the park that it should be. So anyway, I'm heartbroken, and I don't believe them.
Thank you. Next.
Hi, my name is Taylor Peston again, and I live in the Belgrove 2 neighborhood. But essentially, I'm coming from a bit of a different perspective when it comes to my opposition to this. And I understand things are already in motion, so it's likely to pass and be the way that it is. But my concern is that Peachtree City lacks workforce housing. There was a needs assessment done by the Chamber of Commerce in 2020 before the pandemic. And one of the main concerns for a lot of the business owners that were surveyed was that Charlotte, please stop, I'm sorry, was that their turnover is very high and they have issues, hiring and retaining staff because a lot of people can't afford to live here. One of the biggest complaints we hear in this community is that traffic is really bad because, we've got about 15,000 commuters coming in from outside of Fayette County every day for work because they can't afford to live here. So when I hear suggestions about moving from 12,000 square foot houses to 20,000 square foot houses, and that the goal for this change is that we are going to make bigger and more expensive houses, what I hear is that workers in Peachtree City are once again kind of being left behind. I think our government in this town does a really, really good job. I think that especially when it was outlined in the comprehensive plan, that we do have a job housing disequilibria that again is evidenced in our traffic patterns. I think it was a really astute observation, and I'm really glad that that was included. But I would love to see, probably not today, but in the future, some considerations being made for bringing more workforce housing to Peachtree City. And that's all I have to say. So thank you, guys.
Thank you. Who's next?
Hi, my name's Kevin O'Mahony. I live in Wilshire Estates. My opposition to this bait and switch, the evidence I'll present is the PowerPoint we watched. The first thing I saw on the screen was uncompromised excellence. And then I heard a report about the green space and the things we need to protect, the way that our budget looks ahead to the future, and the way that when we make changes, when we alter things in this city, we do it for the benefit of everyone who lives here. What we have here is a compromise. We have a bait and switch. We have a reduction of value for all stakeholders that serves no one who lives here. And I hope you'll oppose it. Thank you.
Thank you. Who's next?
Hi, April Harwell. We pride ourselves on being very community, family-oriented, and by doing this, we would take away that space for our children to play, build bigger homes, you have bigger families, and we're just pushing our children closer to the road. And sorry, I've never been to one of these meetings before. I just feel like, the more square footage, we're gonna have 4, 5, 6 family homes now, and our children need to play. They need to play outside. We need to get them off of their electronics. And by pushing it closer to the road, I don't want my son outside if he has 5 feet to play in. I'm more comfortable with 10 feet. In the backyard, we all kind of grew up with having more space. We're taking that away slowly as time goes, and we need to kind of think about the children as well, not just what us adults want and the money that comes with it and stuff. So that's all I wanted.
Thank you.
See that family side of it.
Thanks very much. Who's next?
Madam Mayor, members of the council. I'm Tony Tremonte. I live in Jefferson Woods subdivision, which is not actually in incorporated Peachtree City, but per your map, just diagonally to the northwest across Red Wine Road. I came here because my wife and I suffer a barrage of emails, social media emails, most every day about this issue and what's being proposed. So I'm very thankful to see your staff present what actually is being asked for, because that is not necessarily consistent with what shows up in social media. Namely, that the number of lots is not changing. I do, however, have disappointing feelings regarding the fact that you're going to squeeze bigger houses onto the same size lot, because as we travel to friends' houses in Fayetteville and elsewhere, we've gone into numerous developments of late in recent years where you drive in and go, oh my goodness, can they stick these houses any closer together? The houses are beautiful, and I'm sure they're worth every penny that has been talked about in terms of what it takes to develop real estate. But I don't think that, oh my goodness, can you stick another house on a piece of property, is fitting with the character of Peachtree City. We've lived here for 24 years now, and while technically not in Peachtree City, we are Peachtree City residents. And as you said at the very beginning, there is national recognition for the quality of life we have. And I hope we don't surrender that for the ability to stick a bigger house on a piece of property. And again, thank you for your staff for clarifying a lot of stuff that clearly is being miscommunicated on a very frequent basis. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, please.
Tony, welcome to our world.
All right. If there are no more who wish, all right.
Good evening. My name is Syed Stillman, and I'm a resident of the Wilshire Estates development. I am a professional model law structural engineer, so I'll be a little bit technical in my presentation. The rezoning request for the reduction of the setbacks, in my view, is unwise and it's reckless. The contractor has not demonstrated a persuasive technical justification even for R12 zoning, let alone a change to LUR zoning. The site planning that is submitted to the city has errors. The stormwater analysis is unsubstantiated and the traffic study is simply inadequate. I have not seen any evidence of credible plans for a methodic transfer of the flow of water from other developments into the farms in the construction documents. The rainwater runoff from Wilshire Estates and other developments pouring into the mill farms is extensive. This is clearly evident from the swamp formation all over the farm in the last 6 months after each rainfall. No pathways are recommended for this deluge in the stormwater analysis. The retainer pond that was referred to adjacent to the Holly Springs Drive has been converted now to a cul-de-sac for future homes by the developer, and this, as a consequence of this, has not been acknowledged in the stormwater analysis. Though not in the federal floodplain, by the industry definition, this area is subject to flooding. And this is going to be a consequence not only to the adjacent developments, but also to the development itself. The people are investing $1 million in buying a house, and if these get subjected to storms and flooding, you can imagine, based on NPR radio, already the industry is refusing to provide homeowners insurance for some of these similar developments. With the cuts and fills and the digging and redigging that we have been observing in the last 6 months, this area is going to be settling in prolonged settlements. This is not only dangerous for the development, but also create further flooding and inundation concerns. Prevention of the surface runoff water is not feasible from adjacent lots that are pouring into this particular area. And there are no plans for that. This flooding that we observe every day after each rain that is there, it will be there. It has to be addressed. Without that, there will be consequences to the development. In the last 6 months that we are watching these excavation and digging and the redigging, and the use of the heavy equipment in the area, the noise pollution and the vibration that we are experiencing at Wilshire Estates, can you imagine what it's going to do to the developments if these developments come any closer to our areas? Also, well, my time is running out. I'm going to stop here. The narrower setbacks will create substantial misunderstandings between the neighbors. and this is not a very good idea. And as a result, I respectfully recommend and request that such a request be
Your time has expired. Thank you for your
disapproved.
comment.
And I am available to help the developer and the city if they have any questions and want any engineering input to that effect. Thank you very much, and
Thank
sorry
you.
I spoke a little too fast.
Thank you. Next, please. Next, please.
Suzanne Brown, and I live in Crescent Oak. March of 2021, city staff recommended 7 conditions of the on the conceptual site plan to be approved. The first condition listed was a 50-foot landscape tree save buffer that shall be provided along Red Wine Road and dedicated to the city as required by city ordinances. If you look at your plan, the current plan, I'd like you to find the 50-foot green belt along Red Wine. Oh, yeah, it's not there. You can't find the 50-foot greenbelt because without application, without mentioning it in their narrative for the rezoning, and without any official approval, someone, possibly the developer, took it upon himself to only build a 40-foot wide greenbelt. I stated this at the Planning Commission public hearing. I want to know why staff in the Planning, Development, Zoning, and Building Department allowed that to happen. Who signed off on any building and work permits that failed to comply with the approved site plan? Now the land is surveyed, drains are in the ground, streets are being built, the developer submits a rezoning proposal to reduce setbacks, and all the things he changed are now on the proposed plot plan. I want to know who approved any of the construction plans. I want to know who even realized this error prior to me speaking about it at the public hearing last month. So now, as of July 5th, there are now 13 conditions, and miraculously, the 40-foot greenbelt is included as one of those conditions instead of the 50-foot greenbelt. That means that if you approve the rezoning, you put a big Band-Aid on this serious error. You will give the developer the stamp of approval for all the things he didn't get approved prior to moving the dirt and surveying. Am I the only one concerned about this? I don't think so. The room looks pretty packed. If your answer is yes, then perhaps you don't belong in the seat you're sitting in. Where is the cease and desist order to stop them from doing what they've done when they didn't get prior approvals? We have a builder modifying plans without notice or approval. Sadly, we have city staff approving the work on plans that don't jive with the conceptual site plan or the conditions imposed when it was approved. Someone with some guts needs to tell this developer to fix this. Do not simply approve this mess to make it all go away. My other question is, how many other developers in Peachtree City are doing the same thing, but we just haven't figured it out yet? Perhaps some staffing changes are needed if staffing failed to realize something this simple. I'm not an engineer. I saw the difference between 50-foot and 40-foot. I could figure it out. The changes that were never approved include the 50-foot greenbelt, which is now just 40-foot. The entrance that was opposite Nesmith Court was moved 500 feet to the north. The mailboxes that were outlined on the HOA property just inside the entrance are not even currently listed on the current plan. Where will they be built? Don't you think the people who are going to buy houses in there would like to know? Rezoning is not needed. The developer can combine lots to create larger lots for larger homes. It's all within R12 to do that. He can do it. I suggest he start with the oddest shaped lots that are not really buildable. The developer should build with all the conditions originally imposed and suffer the financial cost himself, which means he needs to put the 50-foot greenbelt back in place as was originally stipulated. To do the right thing for your current citizens, you need to deny this request, mandate that the builder comply with all the conditions outlined in March of 2021, including that greenbelt. Slashing standard setbacks and allowing a developer to overbuild little lots is not how Peachtree City should operate. It's not even how I want it to look. I suggest that he start with the oddest shaped lots, as I said before. Do you really want a neighborhood of 5,000 square foot houses that are 2 stories tall, that are crammed together with just 10 feet between the houses and barely 20 foot of driveway to park a car?
Your time has expired.
I don't
Thank
think
you
that's
for
what
your
we want in
comment.
Peachtree City. It's certainly not the neighborhood I would want to live in. I hope you all deny this.
Thank you. Who's next? Anyone else wish to speak in opposition?
planning to speak, but I would like to address something that I haven't heard.
And could you start with
addressed
your
yet.
name, please?
My name is Carla Jacob. I am representing the HOA from Mount Brook neighborhood, directly across the street from the new development. And we do have large lots in Mount Brook, which we are very proud of, and we have no problem selling our homes on a very large lot. And so it gives me a lot of dismay to see how a greedy builder will try to crush the size of lots to build bigger homes, and I would be surprised to find people that would be willing to pay that. The item that I would like to address is traffic. We live coming out of Mount Brook. During school days, you cannot get out of our neighborhood because of the golf carts. And then if you get a break in the traffic from cars or buses, typically you have to turn to the right or to the north because you can never cross. Now, my understanding, I've lived in Mount Brook for going on 13 years. My understanding when this development was beginning to be talked about, the developer was supposed to put a tunnel or some type of a way for golf cart traffic to get to the school system. That is gone. I also noticed that the entrance to this development has been moved. We didn't know why, but as far as traffic getting in and out of Mount Brook, it is literally impossible and very dangerous for the kids that I see driving the golf carts because they don't adhere to the stop signs on the cart path to make way to the cars. So my concern is just echoing everyone that has talked, but I would like to bring up the point about the traffic. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, please.
How you doing, Mayor? Mayor, my name is Pat Kelly, and I'm a Wilshire Estates resident. I moved here about 10 years ago, so I'm a relatively new resident, but I moved here for the reason a lot of other people live here and moved here. It's a great place to live. No kidding, right? It has great schools. It's a safe city. We talked about this a lot this evening before we talked about this subject. You get a great small town feeling being here in Peachtree City. The open spaces, overall great quality of life. And it's very important, we have a responsibility to preserve that way of life, that quality of life, that character, that's our identity. There also has this human element. It's my friend and my neighbor who sits right over here. When we talked about the pond being altered and the resulting damage, that's her backyard. That's her backyard that was destroyed and damaged as a result. And I'm not too sure what kind of remedy is going to be offered for that. And this development's going to be the first thing people see from Peachtree City, because if you know how obviously the lines are drawn, it goes right from Fayetteville, I believe, where Storrs Mill is, in the school area, and it goes right into where it's like, welcome to Peachtree City. The first thing you're going to see is homes built 10 feet apart. I don't know if that's a message we want to send. I don't think that says anything about our quality of life. Thanks, appreciate it.
Thank you. Next.
Robert Harwell. I'm going to be real quick. Our citizens, the ones that elect all of you, they don't want this, obviously, because our city is great how it is, how things are done. You've talked all night about how everything is so wonderful. It's beautiful. We're top 5 in different categories in Georgia because the way that we've done things since I grew up here. I'm raising a family here, and we've done it the same way ever since. Everyone's opposing this. The only person that was in favor, just wanted to point out, that he said that people wanting to move into Peachtree City want the bigger houses on smaller lots, where everyone that's here does not want that. So it's pretty clear. I mean, I just want to say that. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, please.
My name is Judy Gagliano, and I live in Lakeside subdivision. But one of the things I want us to say, when you were talking about the setback being 50 feet or whatever it was, when whoever cleared that land, there's not one tree left on it. There's not one piece of greenery. There's nothing pretty about it. So when they build whatever they're going to build, Is there a requirement that they replace some of those trees, that they make the landscaping pretty, so when people come into our town from that direction, they'll see what we have in our older parts of the town, beautiful trees and beautiful landscaping and things like that? That's kind of a question, but I would like to make it a suggestion that you require them to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, please.
Hi, I'm Laura Anderson. I live in Wilshire Estates, and I've lived in Peachtree City my entire life. And the nice thing about Peachtree City is the backyards. You have all that space to play. Growing up, that was my safe place to play with my friends, and you weren't in traffic. You were safe. But like the lot size that you're allowing with 25 feet buffer zone between Wilshire Estates and the neighborhoods behind us, first of all, it's disruptive for us. Already all the noise from the construction, they haven't even started building the homes, but can you imagine when they have all of these homes built there, the amount of people living there, and all of the noise and hectic, I guess, all the disturbance between the conflict now between the two neighborhoods, it's just gonna cause a whole bunch of other issues. And then additionally, the water, it's completely flooding our backyard. It's washed grass away. There hasn't really been any solution to how they're gonna get that stormwater not to flood not only our backyards, but also the houses built on the 3 lots that are currently flooding inside of the Mills Pond area. So, like, yes, it's great, you can sell these houses for $1 million each, but they're packed in there like sardines. It's not the quality of life that Peachtree City stands for, that we represent. Like, if I was to come back to Peachtree City when I move away, if I want to raise a family here, I don't want to live somewhere like that. I want to live somewhere like where I grew up, not packed in like sardines. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, please.
Hi, I'm Pam Howland. I live on Lakeside Drive. And I tell you the truth, at one time, we thought about maybe moving down there. But now that I see that location, and I see that they are just right on top of each other, there's no way in the world that I would want to ever live there. And I can't believe anybody else would want to pay that kind of money for that small a house. But my other concern is the water. You mentioned the water. What will happen when these people they get in there and they build their houses, and then they have water problems? Will they be able to come back and sue Peachtree City because you allowed this change on the lots and you've not taken care of the water situation? Will that be something that we as residents will have to pay for that insurance? Will those people be able to sue us? I'm asking a question.
Just finish up your comments.
Would that be possible? I don't know. I mean, if I built a house in good faith thinking that I wasn't gonna have a problem with water, and then I do, I think I'd be looking for somebody to sue. And you know how people are about suing. So I think we need to think about that in terms of that too.
Thank you. Next, please.
Hi, good evening, Mayor, Council. I live directly across the street in the Mountain Brook subdivision, as talked about.
Your name?
Mike Fenton, sorry. I'm part of the HOA, part of the ARB. Agree with everything said, just want to go on record to say those houses are not commensurate with what's in the area. I live on a 1-acre lot in a 4,500 square foot home. I can sit on my back deck, or could sit on my back deck and look at the horse farm that was there. I can attest to everything the engineer said. Right now, I watch the flooding, persistent, continuous, standing water that's in there right now. And I've seen where the landfill has put in what was a retention pond. So I think there are real engineering problems here. I am an engineer also, so I can see that. I've seen some of the comments, whether they're Facebook or not. I don't know that it's been properly vetted out, and I think there is a solution that the builder has. It is simply reduce the number of lots, build less houses, take away that problem, and it also reduces the traffic in the area that everyone has already spoken to as a growing problem. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, please. All right, we're going to hold at 16. Is that right?
Well.
No further?
All right.
All right. With that, seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Council?
Madam Mayor, I've got a few questions. Robin, when we spoke at the 2x2, I asked you about the pond and had it been filled, and you said no. And yet, when I look at the drawings that came in, and I finally got out my magnifying glass because the drawing was so small I couldn't even see it, it sounds like it was filled in.
There were 3 ponds, and I apologize. I thought that you were talking about the big pond. And
Okay.
so, since then, engineering can explain the other 2.
I would like David to explain why we allowed them to fill in the detention pond.
They were not detention ponds. They were small farm ponds on that property, probably for watering the horses. Just like the big pond is, it's just a pond. It's not a stormwater BMP. It's not a stormwater BMP or anything like that.
It wasn't designed for that, but it was certainly functioning like that.
Correct. There were little farm ponds on the property. The engineers who designed the subdivision did an environmental study. They located wetlands, and they also located streams that were state waters and everything on the plan. And they showed those small ponds being removed for the development. Our consultant that reviewed the plans would not have flagged that as an issue at all, because they were not identified, you know, by the professional licensed engineer that drew the plans up as being a regulated wetland. And as far as I know, nobody has asked to see the plans, the stormwater plans for this development, to see how it was designed, you know, by a professional engineer. So,
Well, we've heard from 2 professional engineers today, and we've seen pictures that taken from residents out there that say there's certainly standing water several days after rain that is leaking down into those areas that are now going to be cul-de-sacs. And we've had several citizens that I've been working with over the last year where the water's draining in from their neighbor's area. And as I've worked with the city attorney, he's got no recourse because it's draining into his property. So without answering all these people's questions about suing people, there's going to be some problems with their, if we do make some suggestions, but thank you.
and just further clarification too, we have, my stormwater manager has been out to this specific site several times, met with the homeowners, and the largest issue is they have a fence and other landscaping and gardens that is blocking water from leaving Wilshire to get to this development. This development has not built anything to back up water onto Wilshire.
Have they been told that?
Yes.
They obviously don't know that.
Yes, they've been told. Our stormwater manager has met with the individuals that have complained about the issue.
Okay. I guess I'd like to, at some point in time, talk to the stormwater manager myself. That's the biggest concern I have with stormwater and where it's going to be going after these houses are built. But when you look at the package that you put together for us, Robin, some of the concerns that I have was, besides the setback that everybody's talking about, was that you've got down here that on the second page, actually it's what the developer, I guess, the MB put together on page 123. When you talk about the residents, on paragraph 3, it talks about the proposed density of 1.91 units per acre. An estimated 185 residents will reside within the project, with 148 residents as being employees of the workforce. I look at when people coming out of Plantera Ridge, basically, you know, during the day, it's a long, long line of people trying to get out. And now you hear about people trying to get out of the other side of Redwine. I mean, it seems to me with 148 residents trying to get into Redwine from one entrance, again, we're going to have a massive traffic jam that we've already heard people complaining about. I mean, I think there should have been 2 entrances. I know we've talked about that, and I know the entrances have to do with Fayette County deciding where they're going to go. But it just doesn't seem like that's going to be a workable solution, and Fayette County should have been told that it's not good enough for us. I know that we don't have the right to tell them what to do, but we can sure make our voices known more strongly than maybe we have. Moving that entrance up the way it did was another mistake. Some of the people don't realize what we tried to do with the bridge versus the tunnel and how that worked out with SPLOST. But it just seems that we're putting a lot of housing there, packed close together, and they're gonna be coming out probably during the same time of day to go to work or in and out during the day. It's gonna be a mess. When you look over at the, on the page 124, the community design, I guess this is the developer's words, not yours, but under number 2D, incorporating natural stormwater management designs as wet ponds and other community amenities, you've got down there that sitting areas will be placed around stormwater ponds to serve as public gathering areas located with open space. They weren't indicated anywhere in the drawings either. But then it goes on to say building, architecture, designs, landscaping, lighting, and other urban design elements. I guess there were comments there. These items are to be determined, so they're not yet even designed. They're going to be determined. There's a couple of them, fire and rescue. Discuss how the fire safety will be addressed. Again, impacts on proposed areas established for a level of service to be determined by the city. So I don't know that the fire chief's already, are you working on how we're going to do the egress and exit of this design? Because it's down as, it's going to be determined by you. Again, on item number 4, fire and rescue, for number C, D and C, additional mitigation measures for sprinklers and fire-rated construction to be determined by the city. Propose improvements, including possible transportation improvements to alleviate congestion and satisfy the level of service to be determined by the city. And transportation, number 7, describe measures to relieve the level of service of D or better. And you go through it, impacts of proposed and established level of service standards. The impacts will be determined by the city. Are we working on all this stuff now? Because this is their proposal that they just put on us. If we approve this, we're gonna have to determine these levels of service. I think a lot of these things are either not being worked on, or if they've been worked on, they haven't been at least discussed with us in this package. So I'm really not in favor of this right now, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Mr. Holland?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. First of all, I was at that meeting in the Planning Commission when it was a 2-2 vote. And I remember Mike Link, who is the commissioner, the chair of that Planning Commission, says, I guess that means if it's a tie, it means no. That's what I heard. Now, whether that's, what you're saying, Robin, I don't know at this point, but I heard it as a no. So with a no coming from the Planning Commission, that does not start very well here at this council. So with that in mind, let me just say, I took a look at the land myself. I drove down there. I didn't drive on it, but I drove by it and looked around. That's the lowest point in that whole area, is this farm. That's going to be a new development. And knowing a little bit about water, and I'm sure that Dave, the manager here, can manage this question, is if it is a low-level land, are we going to have an issue with pervious versus impervious services, given the fact that this is so dense a layout of homes? We're not going to have very much pervious land left for it to drain, which means you're going to have a lot of runoff. A lot of runoff means a lot of erosion, and that's a problem as far as I see it. Now, I'll let you answer that before I go on.
What exactly is the question? It's whether-
Pervious, has anyone looked at pervious versus impervious surfaces, given the density of this packing in this development?
Yes, the engineers have taken that stuff into account because they have designed and they're in the process of grading and building 2 stormwater management ponds for that development, where all the water will drain to and be treated. So yeah, they have taken that into account. They've designed a storm drain system in the subdivision. Probably what a lot of concern is coming from is that they're still working out there. It's not finished grade out there at all. There's standing water everywhere because they're not done.
The site plan was approved by the planning commission. Is that correct?
Yes, I assume.
And now we've got a new plan that have come in that's different than the one for 2 years ago. Was any of that taken into consideration as far as more along the lines of erosion because of the runoff of that land? Because it is the lowest point, that means that everything's going to come in that direction.
I think the conceptual site plan was approved, right? Not this plan.
Just the original one back in 2021, is that correct, Robin?
Yes.
Okay.
Can I make a suggestion, council?
Sure.
Can we bring Mr. Lindsay back up here to answer those questions specific to the project that they're working on and the design that they're working on? Staff is talking about the conditions that exist and the information that's in the packet, but I think the representative of the developer would be best to answer those questions.
Great.
You can, but I would like to make sure that our city engineer understands the problems.
I'm with you. I hear you 100%, but I'd like to hear from the developer themselves on what they're going to do in response to the questions that you're asking for pervious versus impervious. That onus would be on them to make sure that they're mitigating that.
Okay.
Mr. Lindsay?
Yes, I mean, obviously we have to have a hydrology study and the water has to be addressed that, thank you, Phil, that will come off of the impervious surfaces. So the water will have to go through whatever the plan will be, whatever had to be modified with the increase in the impervious surfaces, Clint.
Well, given that fact that you've developed some kind of stormwater arrangement there, what about the erosion issue as the water will come between the houses before it ever gets to any type of conduit to take it away? It's going to create tremendous erosion of the land.
Well, it shouldn't be any more erosion than any other property. I mean, it's going to have grass and, ground cover and you have gutters and all that. So I don't see what that would be. I'm trying to talk here. Any more than any other house in Peachtree City. I mean, obviously, it comes off the roof, it's got to go somewhere, and it's got to be addressed properly and designed properly, but that will be handled if this rezoning is approved, yes.
Okay. I don't necessarily agree with what you're saying, but I hear what you're saying. The pervious versus impervious surfaces, was that looked into by the stormwater people that came to look at this property?
You know about the engineers?
Yes, the engineers,
Well,
your engineers.
Right. Well, the engineers, that so far, right, the plan that was approved 2.5 years ago, obviously that was done. And before we can go any further into the future, it's going to have to be designed. It's going to have to pass state law, local law. I mean, that's a requirement. So it absolutely, the answer to your question is it will be, Clint, because it can't be built otherwise.
Okay.
And I think what would help answer the question too is that if this is approved with larger houses, they would have to come back and redo their hydro study to account for more impervious area for the house.
And if that's the case, wouldn't that have to go back to the planning commission and not here to the city council?
So the hydrology study is not what triggers having to go back to the planning commission. The rezoning is what triggers them.
Okay.
So if the rezoning is approved, yes, they have to start the whole process from conceptual site plat, all the way through.
Okay, well, thank you
If
for
the
all this.
LUR is approved tonight,
Yeah.
then they have to go back through the whole.
The whole development process, yes,
Robin, would you say that's like starting over this process all over again?
absolutely.
As far as layout,
Yes, yeah, I mean, literally
Layout.
from step 1, conceptual site plan to the planning commission. Step 2, the road construction plans, which include the hydrology.
Appreciate those
that's
answers.
very interesting.
Yes, it is. That's something I didn't realize, but now I do. I'm going to comment on a couple of other things here. The land use that we have here in our wonderful city that I love is density in the centers, and when you get out to the outside of the city, it should be less dense. An example of that is what we've just heard tonight, where there are large lots, 3 acres, 2 acres, Now we're talking about a quarter of an acre, and we're gonna put a big house on that. To me, that is not following the land use, because that area is part of the periphery of the city and not necessarily the center of the city. Is the land use issue been taken into account for this particular project?
So our land use plan calls for quarter-acre lots on the future land use map. And so that has been considered, yes. The size of the house is never considered in any of our zoning
Good.
or land use categories.
I certainly understand that. Does it comply with that? Yeah. Does it fully comply with the comprehensive plan as written right now? All sections of that?
That's where the density comes.
Because that's where
So-
density comes in the comprehensive plan.
Well, those policies
Mm-hmm.
drive the creation of that future land use map. So that future land use map is a reflection of those policies. So if it meets the map, then it meets those policies.
Let's talk a bit about the setbacks. I have the 2021 map here and the 2023 map. And it looks like, from what you're seeing in your recommendations, is that the rear setbacks are going to be changed. Let me make sure I've got this right. They're going to go from 30 feet to 20 feet. And I heard tonight that, that's starting to cause problems because they're getting closer and closer together with the surrounding area. Now, I did hear that you're going to take away the surrounding areas 20 to 30 feet and leave those at 30 feet. But that means the interior ones are going to have that same issue. They're going to have no place for the kids to play. I'm looking at the map here, and it looks like they're going to have 15 feet maybe in the backyard to play in. I know my daughter, when she went out to play in our yard, we had a big yard, and she had a great time back there. 15 to 20 feet is not an awful lot in the backyard, in the center of this development. Yes, in the outside, they're gonna put 30-foot setbacks. Did I understand that correctly, Robin?
So, not making a value judgment on the amount, the periphery lots will have 25-foot green belt plus the 30-foot rear setback. So they will
Correct.
have 55 feet
Correct.
from the existing property lines, rear property lines of the existing homes. So that's 55 feet,
Correct.
Is that on both edges? That's
the whole periphery.
the west and the north?
That's
Yep.
just the periphery, not in the
Correct.
center part.
How much is a setback in Wilshire?
It's 30 feet,
Okay, so now we're at 85 feet.
55, yes. Ask the planner to do math
Okay.
on the top. And, yep, that's right.
Now, moving over to the front setbacks, we're gonna go from 40 to 25. That means that your driveway coming up from the street is gonna be, I guess there's a certain amount of sidewalk and curbing, and then you've got whatever is left is going to be your driveway into your garage. Did I understand that correctly? That's the 25 feet that you're talking about in the front setback.
Right, so the 25 feet is measured from the property line, not from the back of the curb.
Okay?
So there will be additional linear feet that's actually in the right-of-way before you get to the curb.
And that is going to be in the interior ones, let me make sure I got the maps right. And all of these are going to be across the board in every lot, 25 feet in the front, instead of what you're asking for, or what was the original zoning on this, is 40 feet. Do I understand that correctly?
That's the recommendation.
Right, that's the recommendation you're going with, okay? The side setbacks are another one. We've got 10 feet between them, which means a 10-foot setback, so that's 20 feet between them. Now you're gonna go down to 5 feet setbacks, which gives us 10 feet in between. I'm sure that there's gonna be some issues there with, you're on top of each other. And is there an issue with police and fire with only having 10 feet between the houses?
So the building code requires that if a house is 10 feet or less, they have to add fire ratings. So if they are built actually right on that property setback, if it's approved, and then they are built on that setback, they would have to add an additional firewall. If they are more than 10 feet, if they end up not building all the way to the setback, then they wouldn't have to. As soon as they go more than 10 feet, they don't have to add that requirement.
Are you saying 10 feet total, 5 per house?
Yes, ma'am.
So with the proposed change, then
Would be
an
10
extra
feet total.
firewall has.
Right.
Got
Yes,
it.
ma'am.
Okay. Well, thank you on that, Robin. I have one more point, I think, maybe two more points. The original green space on the road, Red Wine, was set by the city at 50 feet.
Yeah, I'm glad you gave me the opportunity to respond to that.
And now we're, all of a sudden, came to 40 feet in
That's
the new
because the
drawings.
county took 10 feet in the right-of-way. So it was 50 feet from the original property line. But now the
Okay.
county has taken 10. I don't know why.
Why did they take 10?
I'm not the county engineer.
Did you get any correspondence in writing from the county that they want 10 feet? If you
don't
do, I'd
know.
like to see that.
No, we were on the phone call with them, so I don't think it was written,
Can-
but I can get something
Yeah,
from
can we
them.
get something in writing? Because that's obviously part of our green belt there.
Well, actually, it is the right-of-way for Red Wine Road. It's a county road.
Okay, so so they've had it all along?
Yes.
So we never had a 50-foot?
Correct.
No.
Even though it
no.
was erroneously put in the
No.
drawings at 50 feet?
So the green belt doesn't exist right now. The
Okay.
property owner has a property line. And they were proposing to put their houses 50 feet from that property line. But then the county came in and said, can we have 10 feet? And the property owner gave it to them at no cost to the taxpayers. And therefore reduced that 50 foot to 40 feet.
Okay, so it appears then to be a legitimate request from the county that they want their right-of-way.
They
Their
asked for
10.
that additional,
Okay,
yes, sir.
just let's get that in writing if we can, please, from them. And let me see if I have anything else on my notes here. Talked about no trees. I mean, I went to look at it, just like everybody else here has gone to look at that. And it's barren territory, full of puddles all over it. I'm sure that landscaping is going to be a critical portion to make that somewhat acceptable. And I think that's something that's missing. I didn't see it in here.
So that's just a city ordinance, we require it, so it wasn't an additional condition because it's already required. They are required, every lot in the city is required to have 2 trees planted on the lot. So, and I did go look at the aerials historic aerials of this, and it has been a horse farm for as long as they've been taking aerials on Google, but dating back to 1984.
Okay, I see that the entrance has been moved from down at Nesmith Court up further in the road. I guess that would be to the north and east of that. Is there anything from the city, from the county, I should say, that
Explains
tells
why.
us that we have to move it there?
Yes, and I asked for that. I do have an email from Phil
Okay.
saying why they moved it back. They moved it back because of the traffic that is already backing up, and they thought that moving it further north from Nesmith would allow those residents who are trying to leave the neighborhood to have a little bit more to be able to get out and not actually have to cut through the queue that is happening. That
Now-
was what the county engineer told us.
And I know Phil Mellon, good engineer, knows his stuff. Let me ask you, was that just a request by him to move it up there, or was it something that he said, you need to move it up there?
It had to do with if I remember the original talks about it, it had to do with the Board of Education not wanting that entrance that close to the entrance into the Stars Mill complex.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you, Mike. All right. I guess I'm going to finish up with basically this comment that, I believe that these should be larger lots there, or smaller homes there that are conducive to this. And I heard what some of the citizens said tonight. I do concur with some and not with all, but I will say that smaller lots like these quarter acre deserve to be smaller houses on them, not these big houses, because I know I mean, look, I've been in business a long time. I know for me, you want to maximize your return. I get it, okay? But in this particular case, we want something that's going to be proper Peachtree City and not something that's just going to maximize the return for the investors. And with that, I am done, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Mr. Prebo?
So you've answered a lot of the questions. I had two marks next to stormwater, but that is all going to be addressed in the final. And I assume as a city, we'll look at it. Same with the landscape design, correct?
Yes, actually, there will be an additional landscape plan review of the entrance, and then the additional trees, we do an inspection before we issue the CO for those trees.
Okay, and so I heard from some of my friends in Wilshire, and they didn't like the original as it went to the planning commission. And so after the meeting with the planning commission, is that when it was changed to where, Rick, did you go to the planning commission with these, or were you were trying to reduce the setbacks on all the lots?
We agreed with the staff's recommendation that the periphery properties, Wilshire and Forest and Place, remain as they currently are under the R12.
Okay.
And so those will not be changed.
Okay, and so what about the side setbacks?
Same thing.
Same thing. So
For those properties.
But those
for
on the
those
outside.
properties, so if I live in Wilshire or Forston Place, I don't see a different setback.
Correct. From what was already approved 2.5 years ago.
Correct.
Right. Okay, but now if I decide I want to buy one in the center,
Yeah,
that's my choice,
yeah.
right?
They're gonna get
I
a
mean,
lot smaller.
You are, and then that's, that's the market demand. If I go in there and I go, hey, I want room for my child to play, I'm gonna get one of the lots
In the back.
in the back.
Yep.
If I don't have any kids and I choose not to, well, then I'll choose to buy one of those.
Or remember, there are different styles of homes. We're talking about maximum.
Right?
There will be different styles of homes, is my understanding, and some will be smaller. It isn't they're all gonna go in and
Or I
maximize
move
on
to
the
some
lot.
other place in the city, or
Exactly.
whichever, right? I mean, that's the market demand. So, now a couple things that I heard comments on, okay, we talked about the landscape design, okay, it has the same amount of homes, somebody didn't realize that. They did compromise or change the setbacks, we talked about that. But I heard a couple times the assurances. How do we know, how do we assure that they don't want to come back and change it again? And I guess that's up to future councils,
Yes.
is that right? I mean, we can only do what we can do, like, we can approve this, if we were to approve it, with those conditions as set forth. But then they could come back. They could come back till the cows come home.
Sure. That's
So
their
there's-
right.
That's, and, that's up to
That's their right.
those that are elected here,
Mhm.
right? So, okay, so, there's nothing else they can do to change though, correct? I mean, once we do it, this is it, right? I mean, until they come forward again, unless you come and apply again. So I'm saying that so citizens realize that, if they want to change something, they would have to come to the elected council again for any of those changes.
Go through the process.
Go through the process. Same number of homes, the stormwater talked about, the 50-foot buffer, you said, so the county took 10 feet, so in essence, there's still a 50-foot buffer, it's just not necessarily gonna be landscaped.
Well, I mean, this happens on GDOT roads too, when GDOT comes in and and they can get an easement. GDOT gives easements out to do landscaping inside the right-of-way. There's nothing that says that the county wouldn't approve that.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I guess the fact that the most affected neighbors are not affected, and then the only people that are affected really are the people that choose to buy inside.
That's true.
What-
If you want to come in and buy one of those properties a year and a half from now, when they're,
Right.
sure.
The
you
people
say-
in Wilshire are not gonna see it, the people in Forest and Place are not gonna see it.
talking about the
Right.
setbacks.
The
Yep.
setbacks, their setbacks that they're gonna see are gonna be,
They're unchanged.
they're unchanged. So, okay, thank you.
Anything else?
No,
Mr. King?
Yes, thank you. Finally, we get down to this end of
Sorry.
the hall. But first thing I'm going to ask you, sir, is I do have concerns with the drainage, and I'm just going to say point blank, I hope you're not looking at putting basements in each of these houses because they'll leak from ever. So that just kills that first point I was going to bring up. But the second one has to do with a power line that runs right through there, the southern portion of there. Wait, are you going to leave it up?
The transmission line, sir?
Yeah.
Yeah, Georgia, it's Georgia Power.
I understand, but there are
Yeah.
ways, I
They're
mean,
not-
you could be buried, but, you know, and I'm saying you're looking to build $1 million home, from what I heard, and 70 feet in front of it is a 4-wire line.
Yes, sir. Yes.
I mean, aesthetically, I
Yeah,
got
it's
issues
not the
with
best
that.
situation, but we can't
I understand,
really
but,
do
but
anything
we,
about it.
we could possibly get with Georgia Power and do something about perhaps burying it, running it under Red Rhyme Road and cross. I don't, I'm not telling you to do it, I'm just throwing the option out there.
It would be nice to do, but
It would make your home values a little
was-
better.
yes, sir,
At
it
least for
would.
5 of them.
but it would be extremely expensive. I mean.
Understand? And I go along with all the comments that were made here, and I'm not gonna repeat them, so thank you very much.
I have a question about, first of all, we all agree without question that we'll maintain the setbacks along the two peripheral subdivisions,
Yes.
both Wilshire and Forreston Place, without question. No matter what we do, we need to protect those neighbors. Do we all agree on that?
Yes.
yes.
My question is, to Robin, I think, if we approved the limited use residential, and we say that with that stipulation, and we say that it goes back through the whole process over again as an LUR, what is subject to change with those new conversations?
Well, would you see any, these are great questions for the applicant. If the LUR gets approved, what substantive changes, what changes would occur between what
The
you,
intent is not to change the design of the subdivision, but whether or not additional measures might be taken for stormwater. remains to
Amen.
be seen. Again, that'll have to be approved, have to go through the process, be approved by planning.
But don't we go
commission,
through that regardless? I mean,
Right.
that's
We do.
the same process.
Right.
So, is there any advantage, additional green space and what would potentially change by going through this whole process again?
well, because they're not proposing to change, because the LUR is what you ask for, and then it starts the conversation between the give and take. But they haven't changed anything between the R12 and the LUR as far as number of lots or street layout, buffers around the periphery. So because they haven't requested those changes, that's why there hasn't been a lot of the additional gimmies that we try to,
Madam
I'll just
Mayor,
say
can I
get.
ask
Yes.
a question? If you do ask them to do that, can we then have them do at least a preliminary design or at least review of the stormwater? I mean, we're still guessing about what the stormwater is going to do.
They will do a design of stormwater no matter what. Whether we pass change to the limited use residential or not, that's part of their processes. Am I,
That's correct. There's already a stormwater plan already in place, and we've already in the process of building it, finalizing the development now. I mean,
Well, that's what
we've started putting curb down, we're getting ready to put the roads in.
Yeah, I understand that, but I haven't seen any drawings on your stormwater control.
well, we do have, if you'd like, we have the road construction plan, we have the hydrology study, we can certainly provide that to you.
Okay. Because I think the biggest problem here is water control.
Exactly.
But, thank you, Madam Mayor.
thank you.
Can I
Any
make,
other-
can I make another comment?
Certainly.
One thing we all forgot, I think all of us here in the council are concerned about our children. They're gonna be crossing over at these roads here, and they're gonna be going to school. and you know as well as I do, they're not always going to abide by the, don't go across this area. Go down the road and go over the tunnel or through the bridge to the other side. I'm concerned that coming out of that development, zipping across the red wine, and all we need to do is have one accident with a child that goes across in a cart, and we're in trouble as a council, as a citizen.
Mr. Howland, that isn't a matter of what we're
I
discussing
know,
in the
but I
OUR.
wanted to bring it up because I'm gonna ask the question.
Thank
okay?
you.
The question I'm gonna ask is, have you taken anything into account of getting students across that street, that red wine, as part of your development?
I don't know the answer to that, Clint, because that's not part of what we're here for tonight. That issue exists as it's currently zoned, as it would if it's rezoned. I don't know I know that the county's building the cart path or the multi-use path all along Red Wine Road up to, I believe, Whitewater and that area up there, to try and get kids to the high school. And I know there's been discussions of a tunnel and whatever to try and not do at-grade crossing on Red Wine. But again, I didn't ask that question of my client because there's no change from today or tomorrow, no matter what happens here tonight.
Correct, and I do understand that. I just wanted to hear your opinion on the safety of the children in crossing over the street from this development.
That's a
Thank
separate
you.
conversation that we can have.
Yep.
All right. My number one priority is to protect the neighbors that we have on two sides, without question. Those setbacks need to stay the way they are, both the rear setbacks and the side setbacks. But that being said, I kind of tap into, Mr. Prebor, what you said about actually the most substantive changes would be 25-foot setback in the front, or 25 feet in front instead of 40. I believe that if that's what the builder thinks there's a market for, and that people come in with their eyes wide open about what they want to buy, I think that's where the free market decides. So that tells you where I'm at. Can I get a motion?
The mayor make a motion that this be denied.
I'll second that.
I have a motion and a second for denial. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? No.
No.
Motion fails. 2-3.
Yeah. Madam Mayor, may I make an additional motion to approve 72304, the request to rezone 2459, 2443, and 2471 Red Wine Road from R12 to LUR?
Include the conditions.
With included conditions as specified.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
No.
Motion carries 3-2. Thank you. Council staff topics. Remove section 1203 and 1204 of Appendix A, Article 12 of Peachtree City zoning ordinance. Mr. Holland.
Okay, you've got it up on the screen?
Let it clear out. You take 5 minutes.
Absolutely. Let's take a 5-minute break. 5-minute break.
Okay.
I guess I
It will go back. That's why I was asking also, what does that mean? What is it?
No, we forwarded it to the county just to let them know. Yeah, we've heard nothing about it.
Great. How you doing? Good to see you.
And that's a good legal question, and, you know, I'm an engineer and not a lawyer on stuff like that. Yep.
See, unfortunately, during the public hearing, if you ask us a question, we can't answer it.
I'm not allowed to answer.
It's just afterwards, like this. I was working with one of the other, with another citizen, where a lot of water is draining down into his property, and he wants to sue the city because they let him build, we let him build there, it's 20 years ago. And there's a law in Georgia that says that water draining into your neighbor's property on your property is your property. Which I found illegal.
Is that the one by Dr. Smith?
Water draining over that property. Is that the one by Peachtree that falls from your property? My property. Specifically water, but even a tree.
Well, yeah, I was gonna say, here's my city.
Sorry about that. Actually, this is one of our longer ones. I'll try and keep it moving, but thanks for being here. Tell me your name.
Vast majority of it is over here. So I went up and in.
Nice to meet you, Alexander. Thanks for stopping in.
It wasn't mine. It was his tree. First he said it was mine, but it was clearly, when you look at the stake, it was clearly his tree. And he said, no, that's his problem. And I said, you're kidding me. Your tree. He went and got his insurance agent.
Now? Oh, yeah. Yeah, thank you. You were just like Jasmine. Yes, thank you. Sorry, Jasmine. She's right. I walked down here and talked to
His insurance agent stood right there and said, a tree that falls from your property, and this is the property behind me.
Jasmine busted me. She's right. Let's get this show on. Isn't it good? It's just so inspirational.
That's why I talk about pervious and impervious. I see it, and I got some things there.
It's really good. Good. Do me a favor. See if you see Phil Premore out there and ask him if he's ready to start.
That's a city question. I don't have an answer for it. Well, you can email it to the city council, and we'll get it to the right people. We have stormwater people in our city, and we'll get it to them.
Bye, sweetie. See you next time.
I've been there. I went down and saw it. I was radio. I saw how it
You're
was.
getting
I
very
could see it
tall.
only from the road.
That's okay. All right.
That's right in it. Send it to the council, we'll get it out to the right people, for sure.
We have to start up again. We have to start up again. We lost one. You guys are eating? You guys are eating?
I'm hungry, man.
Okay.
Frank, you ready?
Trying to be a little punched up.
All right. We will resume. Mr. Holland, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. Tonight, I'd like to spend a little bit of time, I've got a few slides that I want to put out there regarding the administrative variance that is part of our ordinance 1195. Who's controlling the slides? You are? Okay, Josh. A little bit of history. Ordinance 1195 is in the Appendix A, Article 12, for variance and appeals. It was passed by the City Council back in 2021, the end of 2021. Now, what you can do with this ordinance is you can request rear setback encroachments that do not exceed 50% of the required zoning setbacks. And we kind of heard that a little bit tonight when we had the Mill Farms issue come up. And this one here is basically can be adjudicated, and you'll see in just a moment, by a committee of 3 people. You also can ask for a decrease in the building setbacks of not more than 25%. And these properties that are adjoining the publicly owned properties, and that there are no other possible locations for any of this that's available. You can also request on these variances, these administrative variances, of not more than 25% in parking decreases. And lastly, for maximum heights, you can add up to, or ask for up to 25%. But what is an administrative variance? It's a variance that is done on small items. What can be considered a small item is, I'll give you an example. The builder builds the house, and the corner of the house is 1 foot inside the setback. 1 foot. Oh my gosh, he made a mistake. It was an engineering mistake or a building mistake, and he ended up in the setbacks. You bring that small variance in, you're not going to move the house for 1 foot. But you can go in and say, you know what, let's give this person a variance on that, and the people who would do it would be the Administrative Variance Committee. That committee is comprised of 3 people: the zoning administrator on planning and zoning, the city manager, and 1 city council. Next slide. Now, is that the next slide? No, go back one. No, I'm sorry, the one you had up there was the correct one. Now, we have land use laws here in the city, and they've done a good job over the last 5 decades here in making Peachtree City the place that we really love. I mean, I fell in love with this place when I came here 4 years ago, and I want to see it remain somewhat the same. We'll do some growth as necessary, but certainly I want the zoning to stay where it is. It's done a good job. Here we have already lots of zoning rules in place. In Chapter 18 of the Building and Construction of our Code of Ordinances, we have Appendix A on zoning and Appendix B on land development ordinances. We've got lots of laws in place. The existing ordinances have been followed for decades, and we've adhered to many of those, and it's brought us to be a premier city. Unfortunately, Section 1202 of the code, and Section, I believe it's 12 in Appendix A, needs to be removed because in 1204, did I say 1202? Well, I meant 1204. Needs to be removed so that we can return to the ordinances that have made this city the great city. Next slide. Problems. Problems with that, as I see them, the administrative variance is done behind closed doors. It is not in full view of the public. This is not the intent of the open meeting law. I believe this is a violation of the open meeting law because this is a committee that was put into an ordinance, just like any other committee that's put into an ordinance, that it has to have we have to acknowledge that to the public. They have to know about it. We have to publish it out there, and then it's got to be in an open meeting where people can come and sit there and listen to that, what goes on in that meeting. No, this is a committee, it is a committee that has been set up by the variance, by the law itself in that variance. So far, since its inception to this change of 1204, we've had 15 administrative variances. 15 in 18 months. That's less than one per month. And 9 of those were in 2022 and 6 so far in 23. And you can see by the results here that some were withdrawn, some were denied, some are still under review, but 11 of them, of these 15, were approved. Now, 2 of the 3 members of this Special Administrative Variance Committee are not elected. They're appointed. And those can supersede the authority vested in the City Council. By saying that 2 out of the 3, let's just say it happens to be the zoning administrator and the city manager, could say, oh, sorry, City Council member, we're going to vote to say we're going to approve this, over the authority that's been vested in the City Council, and in particular the city person that's on that committee. There's been no follow-up information on these administrative variants that have been given to the City Council, none whatsoever. And I believe that the City Council needs to do all variances in full view of the public. Now, my suggestions. While the City Council has been vested with the deny or allow variances of all types, whether they're big or small, easy or complicated, residential, commercial, whatever they are, the City Council should be prudent in each and every decision to approve or deny any request. That ordinance 1195 violates the open meeting law. The city.
Mr. Holland, that you just contradicted yourself.
I did where?
Go to the previous slide. You say you believe that it violates the open meeting.
Right, that's the first one. I believe it violates the Open Meetings
And
Act.
You're using it as a statement of fact.
Okay.
So I want to ask a question to Mr. Meeker.
Okay.
Is the administrative variance ordinance that the city currently uses, is that a violation of the Open Meetings Act?
The ordinance itself is not a violation.
Thank you.
State law under 5014-1 actually describes a meeting to include a committee that is created by the governing body, which this was done in the ordinance.
Correct, it was done, but now that they're a committee, shouldn't they be subject to the same that all other committees are, open meeting style?
Absolutely, they have to comply with the open meeting.
Okay, so that means that this committee needs to be an open meeting, acknowledgement meeting where public can come in and sit in on these 3 people and watch the proceeds of what goes on.
Yeah, if it's a meeting as defined under the open meetings law, it has
Okay.
to comply with the requirements of
Okay.
that law.
Thank you. All right, let's go back. Okay, since the ordinance, it doesn't violate the open meeting law, but the intent of a committee, it violates by not being an open meeting. It should be removed from the ordinance and revert back to the land use and variance ordinances previously approved by past city councils. Since there are only 15 requested administrative variants in 18 months, there is really no good reason why these variances could not be brought to the city council for a proper public hearing and not have a administrative variance committee.
Let me add to you, for you, Clint.
Okay.
I think during some of our comments we've had before, it was either Phil or Mike that had said that a lot of the variances that were requested by members of the citizens were denied by the previous city manager. So to say that there's been 15, there could have been 110. We don't know what previous city manager never brought up.
Well, that's just what we have available in the records is 15.
Let's let him get through his presentation.
Yeah, so I'm basically saying that this is an appropriate use of city council time if there's only 15 that come through. And go to the last slide. No, That's the wrong way. Keep going. And that's the reason why I brought it up for a city council topic discussion, and I'm going to suggest that we do repeal both sections 1203 and 1204 and remove them from the Code of Ordinances of the City of Peachtree City, Georgia. Madam Mayor, open for discussion.
Thank you.
Can I ask our city manager if it's okay if we get a history from the staff perspective?
Yes, absolutely.
Could you please give us a history, not, yeah. I know I did one well before that, I think.
I just put one slide together of the history of the administrative variance in the
Okay.
city.
Drum roll.
There we go. It's a lot of words. It's not my best work, but
1992?
1992
1992.
is when the first administrative variance was created. So before that, an administrative variance did not exist. It applied, and so what you'll see the sub-bullet is what are those conditions? What could qualify for a possible administrative variance? It had to be an existing setback violation not created by the current property owner to the maximum of 25%. It was reviewed by the Administrative Variance Committee, which at that time included one council member, one planning commissioner, and the planning director. That existed in that form until 2008, when then the city council, they kept the administrative variance, but they created a special exception variance. The special exception variance, so everything from the administrative variance kept the same, but we'll note here that the committee makeup changed at this time too. So they swapped the planning commissioner out with the city manager. But everything else consisted the same. So it was still that existing violation, not more than 25%. The special exception variance, there were 3 instances that you could possibly qualify in order to apply. One was the decrease, a request to decrease any setback next to a city-owned green belt, so side, rear, whatever it might be, up to a maximum of 25%. The request for decrease of parking, maximum of 25%. An increased fence height for safety or privacy, and there was no maximum. It was reviewed by City Council in a public hearing. Then in December of 2021, what Council did at that time was to combine the administrative variance and the special exception variance into one category of administrative variance. They kept all of the existing requirements that were created in 1992 and 2008 ordinance. So existing setback violation, decrease any setback next to city-owned greenbelt, decrease parking, or increase fence height. They added one more condition, one more kind of category, which was to add that rear setback encroachment of a maximum of 50%, but required letters of support from all the surrounding property owners and the HOA. And they added a condition that the maximum height of the fence increase could not be more than 25%. So that was reviewed by the Administrative Variance Committee, which kept the same structure from that 2008 ordinance.
Thank you. I want to comment because I won't say where I read it, but I did read where it's like, oh my gosh, Mike, you and I, we're lame ducks, right? How ridiculous is that? I am self-employed here in this city. My retirement depends on how this city does, okay? So just get that on the record that I'm not here to do anything that's going to hurt my retirement. I probably have more invested in this city than most. I'll just say than most. My house, 2 businesses, and my retirement income. So if you think I'm going to do something that's going to hurt my retirement, I can assure you that I am not. Okay? So, and you know what? I want to talk a little about open meetings. Why are you guys getting emails to your personal email instead of your city? When I get an email to my personal account, I immediately immediately respond and say, send it to my city email, or I forward it to my city email. And then when I respond, I copy everybody on council. So there's nothing being done behind closed doors. You talk about open meetings, that's when things go to your private email, and you guys don't present it to the city. And so, you know what? I've only got, let's see, how many days? 5 months, 18 days, 2 hours and 40 minutes left, okay? But I'm still gonna be here, and I'm still gonna have a voice about what happens in this city, because I care, okay? And this whole thing of bringing all this up like there's something nefarious going on, yeah, okay, that's ridiculous. You should have asked Ted, Ted, what do you think about this, okay? And gotten an answer. You should have gone to city staff and said, hey, what do you think about this, okay? If there's something that needs to be changed, yeah, I'm tweaked or something, okay? Yeah, I'm all in favor of that. But to sit there and for people to make accusations that my heart is not in it is wrong.
That
Okay.
certainly was not done in this.
Hang on, I mean, I'm not gonna echo what Phil said, but what concerns me is what you have put here is almost identical to 3 letters to the editor now. And I have a concern about people campaigning from this dais. And that's exactly what I interpret this to be. And if that's what you're doing, sir, that would be an ethics violation.
No, that is not what I'm doing.
That's exactly what you're doing. in
Your
my
opinion, in your opinion. My opinion is, I just don't like the idea of having things done behind closed doors.
Then why do you not turn in those personal emails to your personal account, to the city email? Why does somebody have to do an open records request?
Because I did it because they sent them there. Future ones came to the city, and I put those in.
There seems to be a lot of them that just went there. There's things that, I mean, it's all kind of stuff.
Can I make a comment about the,
And I don't like it.
Mr. DiStadio.
as far as the administrative variance is concerned, I think we ought to keep one. I think we should make some changes. For example, I think that maybe we ought to rotate the council person.
Yep.
Because that way everybody has an opportunity to be on one. I've been on one for whatever reason, but I chose to be on one. I do think it would be better if we didn't have the planning and zoning person on, but had maybe, I don't know, pick a person, but the city manager is good to have on there. And we can have, or at least have planning and zoning on, but not a vote. So that it would be the person that's the city council and maybe the planning. What I'm trying to say is I don't think anybody ought to vote, but be a council person. We're elected officials. We shouldn't be staff that would be vote.
That
Yep.
parallels exactly the conversation that you and I had a couple of days ago. And rotating it, I think it's a great idea. And as far as the vote, perhaps we should only have the one council member vote to make the decision. And add to that, perhaps, as soon as that decision's made, whether it's the one person or all 3, it really doesn't matter to me, but at least we are informed of it, and right now, it's public information, nobody's hiding it. And, you never asked for it,
I didn't even know what was going on. I didn't.
Well,
I'm relatively new on that. I will tell you, though, honestly, I swung for the fences on this one. Okay, and let me finish, and knowing that it was going to create quite a hubbub, both on the city council and among citizens, I knew that was going to happen, and I did it. But I'm going to say that the right thing to do is what I hear from my colleagues here, is that maybe we need to take a look at how we amend that to make sure that it is an open meeting style of variance. That's really what I'm looking for.
I can almost, if you would, the email chain that started this thing would, back and forth or whatever, and then I finally chimed in, and I said, this rotating it could be a discussion. The voting thing could be a discussion, and, there is absolutely no reason for anyone, whether they're in this room or not, to make an insinuation that any one of us that were in readily available. So it's easy to schedule like that.
Mhm.
But we need to take that extra step and rotate it. That's all we're saying. So we don't need to go through this rigmarole of getting emotional and all bent out of shape about stuff.
I apologize for getting bent out of shape.
And I'm not emotional about it. I was just trying to look to make sure that we're following the law and the law of open meetings. That's what I'm doing.
I still have, I'm gonna just be upfront with you, I still have reservations about what you just said.
Okay, fair enough.
We have a heavy responsibility as council members. We have a big job. And one of our responsibilities is to get the facts. And this was the perfect example when Mr. Holland, and I put this in writing to you, I wish that you had taken your concerns to the city manager, get a little history, find out, I've found out in these discussions that the reason this administrative variance was tweaked in December of 2021 was there was a backlog. Citizens were having to wait 45 days or longer, pay $300 or more for advertising, when in fact they had situations that any one of us, any reasonable person would find appropriate for Peachtree City and needed to be approved. So the reason, the rationale that this came up in the first place was to protect our citizens who are trying to usually add on to their homes and not subject them to 45-day waits or longer unnecessarily. There is nothing nefarious going on. This is not something that should be a hubbub. Our job is to make sure there's no hubbub, that there is information that we get from our city manager. He does everything he can to make sure we have all the information we need. He makes himself available almost any time you want to come in and talk to him. And I would encourage you going forward to take him up on that and get that background information so it doesn't come to this kind of a thing. It doesn't need to.
Thank you, Mayor, I appreciate that, but on the same token, I think the discussion that we're having tonight was exactly appropriate to get something done as we move forward with some compromise, as has been said by Councilman King. We may need to look at some of the compromise things to make sure that it's an open meeting.
All right. Any last comments? Do we have an executive session?
Thankfully, no.
Can I get a
I'll second it.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? We're adjourned.